Right, we'll make a start. I think it's 6:30. Am I right on timing?
Yeah, we're just going live now as we speak. So a couple of seconds and we'll be live. Yeah, we're live now.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee. This is another remote meeting where all participants, members, officers, and also other contributors to the meeting tonight are doing so from their homes. So hopefully the technology will hold up. If we have any technical issues, I'm sure everybody will understand. The meeting, as you will know, is being transmitted on YouTube live as we speak, and also will be available to watch when it's all over, on the watch again type of thing. Just a few formalities. My name is Councillor Richard Butler. I'm the chairman of the Planning Committee, and other members in the meeting tonight are my colleagues, Councillors Brennan, Clark, Healy, Howitt, Murray, Podu-Horan, Stockwood, Verdi and Thomas. Just a little reminder to all contributors, because of the way the technology works, and I know we sometimes fall a little bit foul of this, but remember to turn microphones on and off as appropriate when speaking or not speaking. Officers with us in the meeting tonight are Mr. Pegram, who is the Service Manager for Communities, and we also have Mrs. Sells, who is the Principal Borough Solicitor, with us this evening. So with those formalities done, I think we'll make a start of the meeting. So item number 1 is apologies for absence and substitute members, please.
Hello, we have apologies from Councillor Gowland and we have apologies from Councillor Major, and we currently have Councillor Howard standing in for Councillor Major. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Councillor Howard, who I think this is your first planning meeting. So I hope you find it, I was going to say enjoyable, but I do hope you find it enjoyable, but I hope you find it interesting as well, as indeed I hope everyone else does too.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I think we were waiting for another councillor to stand in for an absent colleague, but they don't appear to be here yet. But I'm sure that if they do appear as the meeting progresses, we will note their arrival time, and if they arrive halfway through an item, then they won't be able to take part in the voting on that. I think that's correct, isn't it? So item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest, either under the Code of Conduct or under the Planning Code. Does anyone have anything to declare? Councillor Thomas.
I'd like to declare an interest in the Eastleigh application as ward member. Thank you.
Right, yes, so the point you're making there is that you'll be standing down from the meeting for that item. Is that the reason you're mentioning that?
Yes, and I'm speaking.
Right, understood. You probably don't need to say that, but it's entirely up to you. So likewise, I think colleagues from Radcliffe-on-Trent will also be standing down for that particular item in the meeting as well. So we'll confirm that when we get to the individual planning application. But thank you anyway for raising that. So we go on to item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 9th of July. For those of us who were here or there, are we happy that those are correct and to be approved? Or should I say anyone against it? Please say so. No, I think we're all happy with those. So thank you very much. So we now go into the first planning application of the night. We have 4 applications to discuss and decide this evening. The first item is for land north of Landmere Lane and west of Melton Road at Walton, and you'll see from the proposal it's quite a detailed application. It's a hybrid planning application comprising an application for full planning permission for the development of a car showroom and service centre, revised plans, with associated infrastructure, plant, car and cycle parking and landscaping, and an application for outline planning permission with all matters reserved except for access for a local centre comprising 4 flexible A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, D1, D2 or veterinary practice units and C2 residential accommodation featuring supported care. I've probably taken a lot of words out of Mr. Pegram's mouth there, but Mr. Pegram, if you'd like to talk us through the application, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I know that Councillor Bansal has now arrived before we started the presentation or the debate. So.
Oh, that's fine. Well, welcome, Councillor Bansal. I know you're standing in for. I know you're standing in, aren't you? So welcome to the meeting.
That's right. Thank you very much. Apologies I'm late.
No, that's quite all right. You're just in time. Mr. Pegram, if we talk through the first application, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll share my screen with you. So hopefully now you can see the title screen. And if we move into the first application, then it's land north of Lambere Lane and west of Melton Road. As you've explained, it is a hybrid application. So part of the application seeks full planning permission and part seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved except for access. Just on this plan, just to highlight, the area which is subject to a full planning permission is the red hatched area, the southern portion. The area to the north, hatched blue, is the area which is subject to the outline planning permission. Aerial photograph showing the site. This is unfortunately a little bit out of date because as members will know, much of the Ed Walton Sustainable Urban Extension has been developed now. So the area to the east is pretty much complete as far as I'm aware, and there's housing up to roughly this sort of area on the west side of Melton Road. Just going through some photographs before we go into the plans of the proposal. This is stood on Melton Road, looking in a generally southwesterly direction across the main access into the residential area. So this is where I'm indicating is Rose Way, which goes into the residential area. Obviously carrying on goes down to the Wheatcroft roundabout. That's standing on the central island again, just showing that junction. And you can see this area behind is the application site, which is before you this evening. That's looking directly up Rose Way towards the housing development with Sharp Hill Wood in the background. Application site is on the left here. That's now moving a bit further south down Melton Road. So you're now picking up the full frontage of the application site, which fronts Melton Road. And then further along, looking back at the site with the houses on the first phase of Rose Way in the background there. We're now looking again southwesterly, looking towards the junction of Lambere Lane and Melton Road, which is just beyond this traffic island. That's the junction. This is a almost completed office development which sits on the southern side of the junction with Aldi to the rear, and then Lambere Lane gives access to a variety of commercial, office and industrial premises. Now looking more northwesterly, so application site you can see starts here, running northwards along Melton Road. And then looking again back up north along Melton Road. So the junction I just showed you is on the left of this picture, the main junction into Rose Way in the distance. Just looking straight in at Lambere Lane, again, that office block. There is a piece of land which sits between Lambere Lane and the application site, which has permission for an office development, and I'll point that out on a plan in just a moment. Again, opposite side of that junction, just looking north. And then this is looking from Melton Road across the application site. So you've got the properties on Rose Way. This is the application site in the foreground here. Looking directly across it in a westerly direction. And then looking more southwesterly, starting to pick up the Lambere Lane area. This is actually stood on Lambere Lane, looking easterly back along towards Melton Road. So there's the access into the garden centre here. We move further along. This is the access point that would serve the proposed car dealership. So this, the southern portion of the site, would be accessed off of Landmere Lane. Moving further along, just showing that office development has been approved, and there's an area here on the left where again there's another office development approved in that location. That's looking north straight into the site. So again, this is where the access would be to the car dealership. And then this is taken from the overflow car park of the garden centre next door, looking generally southeasterly towards Landmere Lane. And then looking more southerly, so this is still within the application site. And then looking across the site in a generally easterly direction, picking up the properties on the Barrett development on the opposite, the Barrett David Wilson Homes development on the opposite side of Melton Road. Again, looking more northwesterly, just across the extent of the application site. Again, just looking Landmere Lane, that's the office development for point of reference. And we then go now to the north of the site. So this is stood on the roundabout, which is in Rose Way. So you saw the junction earlier that comes in off of Melton Road. Shortly into that access road, you come across this roundabout. The access has already been formed into what would be the area which is subject to the outline planning permission. So the houses are behind the photographer in this shot. Turning round to the left, looking more easterly, so you come along Rose Way from Melton Road onto this roundabout and then further on into the rest of the estate. And that's just again stood on Rose Way, looking across at the application site. The junction I just showed you is just off the screen here. And then again looking along Rose Way, so the application site is on the right here. And then head on into the site. Now, the next plan was initially submitted with the application. It has been superseded, and I'll explain why, but it's a useful plan that sets out the master plan and the context of the site. So the site you are considering this evening is effectively excluding this pink area. It's this area here and everything north of here, running up Melton Road, round Rose Way, and then back down that boundary. This does show a pub building in this location, which was part of the original proposal. That's now been removed from the scheme, and I'll explain the changes to the scheme in just a moment. So you have an office development here, an approved office development here. There's the Aldi there. There's a coffee drive-through, a fast food drive-through in that location. A parade of 3 shops approved with a nursery, and then a care home facility or nursing home facility in this location here. In fact, I'll go to the next one, it's probably easier. Just to explain then, this is the revised proposal which you are being asked to consider this evening. So again, just to reiterate, this part of the site for the car dealership, you are being asked to give full planning permission to that element of the site for a car dealership with a servicing area, car parking and a valeting building adjacent to the boundary there. The area to the north, in this portion, they are seeking outline planning permission with all matters reserved except for access for a care facility in this location and a parade of 4 shops in this location with associated parking. These plans are submitted in terms of this element of the site. These plans are submitted for illustrative purposes only. Layout, scale, appearance and landscaping are reserved for subsequent approval, so the details of that would need to come forward at some future stage. In terms of the element which they are seeking full planning permission, it's the car showroom, as I say. These are the proposed elevations of the building. Effectively, that's the one that would face Melton Road. And then the other one facing down towards Landmere Lane is this one here. There are some images which probably bring that to life a little bit better than 2-dimensional plans. So you've got your car dealership and offices in this area with toilets and facilities. First floor accommodation, office accommodation above the sales area. the MOT and servicing area to the rear here. And then, as I say, as a separate building, there is a valeting unit. This is just a roof plan showing position of roof lights, etc. And then the general layout of the site. So again, access off of Lamere Lane, car parking around the site, display areas obviously to the front of the building and within the building, the servicing area and the valeting building that I mentioned. That's the valeting building, very simple, functional building, low level, monopitched roof. And then these perhaps bring the proposal to life a little bit better in terms of portraying it in a better light in terms of the appearance of the building, and a shot of the inside of that building and how it might look. Chairman, that's all of the plans. Generally speaking, the application site, as you will be aware, sits within the Ed Walton urban extension. It sits in this area down here. Just to explain, this is deliberately washed or faded out so as not to sort of give an indication of hard and fast boundaries. But effectively, the blue area is an area for employment for B uses or non-B employment generating uses. So the car showroom sits wholly within that allocation, and the care facility sits largely within that, but partially within this area here, which is designated as a local centre. The 4 shops would sit wholly within that, that local centre designation. Clearly, Chairman, policy is a starting point for the consideration of this application. I would stress that this is not allocated for conventional employment, what we might call conventional employment. It is intended to be a more flexible, varied approach, which is not solely for B1, B2 and B8 uses. It is also allocated for what I called non-B employment generating uses. So one of the considerations for the committee clearly is whether or not the proposed development provides employment and is therefore falls within that requirement for employment generating. There was a requirement on the original master plan for this site for a parade of shops or a local centre. That has moved around the site a little bit over time in the various iterations. Originally, Chairman, it was shown to be more centrally located here in this part of the site. You'll probably be aware there's a school under construction here, which would also provide a degree of community facilities. This area of the site was originally granted planning permission for a supermarket with the 4 shops. The consent for that supermarket remains extant because part of that scheme included the installation and the layout of the access and the junctions and the roads. That's been implemented, so that remains extant. However, as you will be aware, the operator who intended to locate here chose not to develop the site and has sold the site to the current applicant. As far as we're concerned, Chairman, we are satisfied that in respect of all the uses sitting within or adjacent to the employment generating allocation, that those uses will generate some employment and therefore satisfy the policy requirements. Beyond that, Chairman, you will obviously, as decision makers, have to consider the other issues of flood risk, highway safety, amenities, design, layout, and impact on the character of the area. All of which, Chairman, I probably haven't mentioned them all, but they're all summarised or they're all mentioned and dealt with in the appraisal section of the report. Chairman, I think that there's likely to be questions, so I will stop at that point. There is a section 106 associated with this application for a health contribution arising from the care facility. That section 106 has not yet been completed, so the recommendation before members this evening is that the Executive Manager for Communities is authorised to grant planning permission subject to the prior signing of the Section 106 agreement and the conditions which are set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pegram. Now, in line of the way of working of the council, we do have opportunity for external speakers on planning applications, and I've actually got 3 names down, but as you'll hear in a few minutes, we haven't actually got 3 speakers. But the first name on the list is Mr. Woolard, who is the applicant's agent. Is Mr. Woolard with us? I can see his name on the screen.
I am.
Thank you. Oh, yes, we can see you now. So the way it works is you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. It's a one-way discussion. You talk to the committee. As soon as the 5 minutes is up, even if you're mid-flow, we have to be quite strict and tell you that time is up when it hits 5 minutes. So as soon as you're ready, you can address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. I'm absolutely delighted to bring this application in front of you tonight on behalf of Pendragon after what's been a horrific time for so many people and businesses. You'll no doubt be aware of how hard the car sales industry has been hit. Pendragon regrettably have not been immune. It's been a very difficult period for their staff. Hopefully a corner's been turned now and car sales have started to pick up, with electric and plug-in hybrid cars taking an increasing share of the market. So I'm really delighted to be the bearer of some good news and a positive future that incorporates significant local investment with job creation and urban regeneration. This Porsche dealership is a real feather in the cap for Rushcliffe. Not only is it an iconic luxury brand renowned globally for design excellence and precision engineering, but it's only the second of these new dealerships to be built. The first is in Santa Barbara in the US. Further, this site will be the focus for the newest range of performance electric vehicles, placing sustainable, non-polluting travel at its heart. So this is really where the electric revolution starts to take off. This application will transform this brownfield site by delivering an iconic showroom and service centre of the highest quality, which will not only support around 40 local jobs, but will be a landmark feature at this gateway location. You can be assured as the committee that Porsche do not stand for any compromise on quality, precision or design. This showroom will be the most visible symbol of their brand for a significant part of the country. They don't accept second best. But hold on, it gets even better. Alongside the full application for the dealership, we're able to regenerate the rest of the site and provide much needed community facilities through the outline element of the application. This provides for an elderly care home and 4 retail / community units. The percentage of older residents in Rushcliffe is rising. Care schemes can unburden elderly people from the worry of more isolated living. They also free up much needed family homes while still providing their residents with appropriate levels of independence. COVID has hit the care sector much harder than many, and the delivery of new fit-for-purpose schemes that designed and operate to more easily protect our loved ones and the staff who care for them is essential. Alongside the care home, the outline application repeats the approved provision of 4 retail units adjacent to the roundabout, where they'll be conveniently and easily accessed by local residents. The location will act as a focal point for the community and will facilitate meetings and chance interactions to help foster community cohesion. This brings me on to the next, and for a planning committee, the most important piece of good news. As Mr. Pegram's told you, this is an application that is unequivocally compliant with the planning policy for this area. As is fully endorsed by your officer's clear and comprehensive report, this mix of commercial employment generating uses along with local community and retail facilities is directly and specifically what is envisaged within the local plan and the supplementary planning guidance. This application will help to deliver the plan. So to sum up, we have quality, performance, sustainability, brownfield regeneration, job creation, significant local investment, placemaking, design excellence, cutting edge technology, supported elderly persons accommodation with more jobs, a convenient and accessible community focus with community retail uses, more jobs, and above all, it's sustainable development and fully compliant with planning policy. After all these months of bad news, sad news and economic uncertainty, I hope you will agree as a committee that this development comes as a real shot in the arm and offers so much potential to boost the local area. What better signal of hope and positivity for the future than to see the sleek lines of advanced sustainable technology emerging from this brownfield site alongside purpose-designed facilities to support and care for the existing community. What an opportunity to build back better. I commend your officer's report to you and look forward to seeing lots of young people actively building and working from this site in a brighter future. Thank you for your time.
Right, thank you, Mr. Willard. That's well within the 5 minutes, so thank you for that. Now we were going to have another speaker who was going to be speaking as an objector. That gentleman is unable to be with us this evening, but he did earlier on today email what he was going to say during his 5 minutes. So could I just confirm with Planning Committee members, have you received an email this afternoon from a Mr. Dallywell? Or has anyone not received or seen an email? It might be easier to ask if anyone hasn't received it. Councillor Clark, you're indicating you haven't received it or you've just not seen it. Microphone. Sorry, we didn't hear you then, Councillor Clark.
I haven't seen it and I haven't received it.
Right, okay, well, with that in mind then, I think in fairness, I think the committee should be aware of the gentleman's comments because he would be talking to us, but for personal reasons, he can't be with us. So with your agreement, colleagues, could I ask that his email is read out to us as if he was reading it by Mrs. Sells? Are we all happy to allow that to happen? I think we should. So Mrs. Sells, if you've got the email, if you could read it to us as if you were, well, you're reading what Mr. Dallywell would have said to us.
Yeah, just bear with me.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I will start by getting straight to the point. This hearing should be deferred. Mr. Cox published his report a week ago and set today's date for the hearing. I've had to, at short notice, change plans and step in to speak here without the opportunity to really scrutinise the report as much as I would like. We have sought legal advice from several colleagues and we are being advised that the report is littered with inaccuracies and errors, and any decision you take here will be unlawful due to these inaccuracies. We need time to investigate these claims properly and consult with you on this through proper process. I hope you will not rush into a decision today that will hugely impact 1,500 households that you are representing and give us the opportunity to do a proper job here. I will say a few words on behalf of the community I am representing though. I represent the views of the members of the community who speak to me in person and through technology. I've had many conversations with many people across the both sides of Melton Road, covering the entirety of the Sharp Hill development. So I just want to be clear up front that these aren't just my views. To get to the point, as a community, we don't support this application. We don't see the need for another care home in the vicinity when there is one being built on Landmere Lane, and there are around 20 care homes in West Bridgford and also other assisted living accommodation. We first and foremost would like to see a pub and maybe shops at the expense of the care home. That would truly give this community a centre that has criminally been missing for 3 years for some of us and help alleviate the feeling that an industrial estate / service station is being built in the heart of our community. Having been to many of these meetings before, I know how this works. I will make a bunch of statements and then the planning officer will take these statements as an attack on their hard work in creating a report and will doggedly defend their position, even if they are wrong. I will not get a right of reply, and the last words you will hear before making a decision will be the officer telling you that I have got it all wrong and he is right. This to me is a flawed system where you rely on the opinions of one man. This may sound harsh, but ask yourselves deep down if what I am saying is true. I hope you will make a stand and represent us and really take on board what I am going to say. Paragraph 9 of the report states that the original proposal included a pub / restaurant and that this was changed as Councillor Robinson pushed back on the pub and asked for shops. This goes against what his community is asking him to do. From the public consultation, it is very clear that the local community, and I mean the 1,500 new houses that are being built around this site and will be directly impacted, not areas further afield that already have community facilities, we're really keen on the application with a pub. We need a social hub more than anything. All but 2 comments in your public consultation have objected to the proposal, and if you read the comments, every one of them asks for a pub ahead of shops. Around 96% of respondents at the time of writing wanted a pub. I keep being told by councillors that there are people in the community with different views to me. Well, we have a publicly funded consultation that says otherwise. Are we making the best use of public funds if we are going to reject the outcome and go with anecdotes instead? Any views shared with councillors should be declared formally or disregarded. I keep being told that a pub will not work in these post-COVID times. Yet here we have a consultation with the public, clearly telling you that they as customers want it. What is the point in spending money on a consultation if conclusions will be drawn independently? I keep being told that if this proposal is denied, the developer could win at appeal, which would cost the taxpayer thousands of pounds. If it is this easy for developer to influence the council with these threats of litigation, then the system is heavily stacked in favour of the developer and the community really have no voice. We need our councillors to make a stand here, otherwise we should all go home and stop pretending we have a say. I keep being told that there is a dire need for care homes in Rushcliffe, even though paragraph 10 states that Councillor Robinson himself questioned the need for yet another care home. I've asked for data about numbers of care homes in Rushcliffe and where they are, but none is forthcoming, so I did my own research so that I can challenge that view with fact rather than opinion masquerading as fact. Looking at actual data for care homes, Rushcliffe seems to be in the middle in terms of ranking across Nottingham for number of elderly people in care homes. However, around half of the people in care homes across Rushcliffe seem to be around West Bridgford, through Edwalton to Radcliffe. This doesn't include the warden-aided housing / assisted living accommodation in those areas. So while there may be room for improvement across Rushcliffe for number of care homes, this isn't really a problem in the locality of this development. It should be solved by developments in other areas across Rushcliffe. I haven't even mentioned that a care home is not in either the Edwalton SPD or core strategy. That should be enough to reject this application. I keep being told, as stated in paragraph 40, that this development will be employment generating. However, Pendragon are just relocating, so they are bringing their staff with them. This is hardly generating new jobs. Again, I question this with Councillor Robinson.
That's
and
5 minutes.
Right, so that is 5 minutes, and if Mr. Dallywell had been speaking, we would have had to have cut him off at this point. I think Mrs. Bell was speaking quite quickly, and we certainly I've made a few notes of what was said, and I hope that was helpful for committee members. We were also going to have one of the local ward members speaking, Councillor Beardshall, but I've been made aware of an email that he sent this afternoon at approximately 5:25, saying that he no longer wishes or is able to speak. He was going to be speaking as an objector to the application. Again, I assume some members will have received the email, others won't have. Would you like me to? I better read this to you, so you, just in case you haven't seen this email. I'm just reading it from my phone here. It says, "Dear committee, my reasons for objection have been incorrectly quoted. I was informed by officers this will be rectified. This has not been done. Therefore, you cannot legally or fairly make a determination as the correct process has not been followed in terms of details and reasons along with representation, etc. I therefore request you raise this issue and delay this application until next month, when you will then have enough time to understand my objection in detail. I am aware of legal proceedings developing with regard to inaccuracies in the report. This may cost the council a lot of money if it goes ahead without correct procedure. Because of the above, I will not speak tonight. The application should be adjourned for fairness and due process." That's the email that Councillor Beardshall sent this afternoon, which I must admit I only saw just before the meeting started on my phone here. So what we would normally do at this stage is go to Mr. Pegram to respond to the comments that have been made by the speakers. In the case of Mr. Woolard, who was speaking on behalf of the applicant, telling us it was good news and bringing helping job creation very special dealership, only the second of its time in the world, a type in the world, or a first in this country. It's a big time for new ways of transport, electric vehicles, etc. It will transform a site, and he's adamant that it falls in line with the development plan for the area. And then, as we've heard from Mr. Dhaliwal's comments, and indeed Councillor Beardsall, they feel that the application is flawed. There are inaccuracies, incorrect information. Mr. Dhaliwal in particular says the community doesn't support the application. They feel very strongly about the the lack of provision of a pub that had been originally being proposed. They would prefer a pub as opposed to shops. And he says that residents will be deeply impacted by this application. He also questions the need for further care home or facilities, which is part of this, the outline part of this application. And he also says that the community needs a social hub and claims that there isn't one with this. And then, as we've just heard, Councillor Beardsall has also made similar points, primarily on procedural and legal aspects. So I think I appreciate that some of that will be perhaps quite new comments, but Mr. Pegram, would you be able to pick up on what we've heard, please?
Yes, Chairman. I'm just trying to find, in fact, to correct the issue that Councillor Beardsall raised. It's a relatively minor issue, Chairman. He sent us an email. I do apologise, this wasn't included in the late representations. He sent us an email saying, I see there is an error in the reports pack. You quoted me as stating local plan part 2 when my email and objection states local plan part 1. That, as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, is the extent of the error in the report. I don't consider that to be fundamental. So I would draw members' attention to paragraph 13, where we do report that he's quoting policy 20 of local plan part 2. Just to be absolutely clear, Chairman, that should read local plan part 1. As I say, my understanding is that that is the extent of the error in the way that the comments have been reported. Just to pick up on the other points, Chairman, Mr. Woolard did refer to this as a Porsche dealership. It would be wrong of me not to say that what you are being asked to consider this evening is a car dealership. Yes, the current applicant is Porsche. My understanding is that they have purchased the site. It's not a case they have an option on the site. They have purchased the site. So one would hope there's a good likelihood that it would be a Porsche dealership. However, Chairman, just to make it clear that you are dealing with a land use consideration, which could be any car dealer, arguably. One thing I forgot to mention, Chairman, in my initial presentation that Mr. Woolard raised, in terms of the retail units, you'll see from the description that they are flexible uses. So they're looking for 4 retail units, which could be used for either A1, A2, or sorry, let me start again. A1 retail, A2 financial professional services, A3 restaurants or cafe use, A4, which is vertical drinking, I think is the one term we use, A5, which is takeaway, and also D1 or D2 or veterinary use. D1 would encapsulate a community facility. So it's quite a wide range of uses that they are seeking on those units. And obviously the details in terms of what comes forward won't be known until either the reserve matter stage or once they're built. Just in terms, Chairman, of the comments from the objector, in terms of the short notice, members will be aware that we have to publish the papers 5 clear working days before the meeting. That's a legal requirement. Clearly, there's a lot of work that goes on before that in terms of compiling those papers. And obviously that is our standard practice. It's not Mr. Cox's decision to suddenly put this on the agenda. It's worked up towards a target date. And as I say, every committee meeting, you have effectively a week's notice of the meeting. Both the objectors, Chairman, and Councillor Beardsall have referred to the fact that the report is littered with inaccuracies. It's very unfortunate that they haven't actually given us an indication of what they consider those inaccuracies to be. I have read the report, Chairman. There might be some typos, but as far as I'm concerned, it's been a very carefully put together report. The objector said he was representing the views of the community. Just to be clear, Chairman, this application has been publicised by letter drop, by site notice, by local press ad. You will see that 49 representations have been received. We cannot guess how many he may be representing. Clearly, they've all had the opportunity, Chairman, to comment on the application. Concern is raised about the need for a care home. All I would say there, Chairman, is that the census data would suggest that we do have an ageing population. Fundamentally, though, in planning terms, you are being asked to consider a land use for the site and whether it is acceptable. The matter of need should not come into your deliberations. Clearly, if there's no need, it will not be built. Bit like Field of Dreams, Chairman. If you build it, they will come. If they're not going to come, they won't build it. Paragraph 9 included reference to a pub, Chairman. That's part of the original proposals. Clearly, in the consideration of this application, we have sought to ensure that this scheme is policy compliant. One of the things that your officers, and I know that members have been keen to see delivered on this site, are the convenience shops or the local centre. We did not feel that the current proposal, or the proposal as originally submitted, satisfied that requirement. The applicant's response to that was to suggest that because Aldi has been built to the south with other units, that there'd be little demand for shop units on this site. That claim was not substantiated, and your officers therefore negotiated the provision of the shop units instead of the pub in this scheme. Chairman, threat of appeal costs, you should not necessarily give any weight or significant weight to that issue. Clearly, if you were minded to refuse the application, I would advise members on the grounds that you probably, the robustness of your grounds and whether I felt they were defensible, but that shouldn't be given significant weight in the determination of your application. And the issue about Pendragon is relocating. These are not new jobs. This scheme does relocate Pendragon or the Porsche dealership from elsewhere within the Nottingham area. They are currently outside of Rushcliffe. It will bring the jobs into Rushcliffe. It creates additional jobs over and above those which exist at the current site. Fundamentally, though, Chairman, the policy does not require that they are new jobs. It's just that the jobs are employment generating. Thank you. Sorry, that the uses are employment generating, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. Now, we've had comments from the objector and also the ward member making some comments and observations about inaccuracies and made some legal reference as well about legal action. Could I just ask Mrs. Sells, my understanding is that Mr. Pegram's given his understanding as to what the inaccuracy was, or the Councillor Beardsall referred to. From a legal point of view, where do you stand on this, and are we still able to continue with this item tonight?
Chair, I'd echo what Mr. Pegram said, that because they may have said there's inaccuracies, but they haven't actually detailed what those are. So we've not been able to make substantial investigations into whether there are inaccuracies and have the opportunity to correct them if indeed there are. So unfortunately, the decision for the committee today is whether the report, as they've read it, they're content with the information within. If they aren't, then there is the option to defer, and then maybe those inaccuracies will be particularised in the meantime. But without the additional information from either Councillor Beardsall or the objector, we can't say whether or not the report is accurate. Certainly from officers' point of view and Mr. Pegram's point of view, it is accurate representation of the deliberations on the application.
Right, thank you, Mr. Sells, for that clarification, and I hope that's helpful for committee members. I think we ought to proceed in a normal way and start discussing and debating the application that is before us, and also taking into account what we've just been told and heard. So, as with any other planning application and committee meeting, it's at this point now that I open it up to committee members for any comments, questions, observations. So who would like to, would anyone like to start with this, this off, please? So we've heard from the applicant and objectors. We've just had a little bit of legal information as well. So we are really here to discuss and make a decision tonight. So Councillor Thomas, did I see your hand go up just then? Okay, I think you may be on mute, but
Sorry, my mouse got caught up in my keyboard. I've got 3 questions really. The first is if Mr. Pegram could explain the pedestrian and cycle access to the 4 shops and the different routes into that area from the surrounding roads and so on. The second question is, he mentioned that there was a Section 106 agreement being produced. I was wondering why that was a Section 106 rather than a SIL agreement, and perhaps he would like to clarify that. And the third thing was whether or not we could confirm there were representations from one of the objectors, I think, that the flood strategy was draining water into the drainage pond that's been subtracted from the previous application, and where there's a building, an office block being built. And I was just wondering if we could clear that up, please. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. So that's a query about pedestrian routes. Also, is it 106 or SIL contributions, also flooding and drainage? Mr. Pegram, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think probably it's helpful if I share my screen with you again to answer some of these questions. So the northern part of the site, as I said, is an application in outline form with all matters except for access reserved. So the final layout, Chairman, is yet to be determined. However, access is for consideration. Clearly, this is the main point of access that would be formed into the site, which you saw in the photographs earlier, has already been created as effectively a bell mouth. Obviously, the pavement runs all the way around at this point, so there's clearly options in the final layout to provide pedestrian accesses at various points along that pavement route, as far as I'm concerned. The other aspect, Chairman, there is a public footpath that runs through the adjacent sites, as I'm indicating, in a northerly direction. It has been the subject of a diversion order, so when it gets to the point where my cursor is at the moment, I hope you can all see that, it then runs up to the roundabout and effectively around the outside of the site. So again, there is footpath links to the wider area. There is not intended to be any vehicle or pedestrian connection between the car dealership site and the northern part of the site. I think that's the first question, Chairman. In terms of the second question about the Section 106 and why that is not SIL, the C2 use could be a care home, or it could be extra care apartments. Extra care apartments would be exempt under SIL, and I'm not sure that either a care home would be SIL liable either. So obviously, for that reason, Chairman, it's not being collected through the SIL. We can, in that circumstance, use Section 106 to collect the contribution, and that's the way it's been deemed most appropriate in this instance. In terms of the drainage strategy, this site here, and I think it has been constructed, was originally intended to facilitate an attenuation basin as part of the wider development of the area. That is no longer required. Certainly in terms of the residential site, just north of where my indicator is, there is a very substantial and very deep attenuation basin which services the residential element. This site has been the subject of, or this application included a flood risk assessment and a drainage strategy, and that has looked at the ways in which this site would be drained and how foul would be dealt with. It is dealt with in the report, Chairman. Obviously, the hierarchy of drainage would prefer infiltration into the ground. That's not possible in this location because of the ground conditions. The next would be discharge into a watercourse. That pipe was already, as I understand it, Chairman, been installed as part of the infrastructure works for the previous planning permission, and that feeds into a local watercourse. In addition, Chairman, under the site there would be storage which would hold the water and attenuate the flows, so that those flows replicate greenfield runoff rates. And as I say, Chairman, it is definitely dealt with in the report at page 36 and 37. But that's hopefully answered the questions that Councillor Thomas had.
Yes, could I just come back, because my internet died when you got to explaining about a footpath. So I'd be very grateful if you could say that again.
Right, Chairman, with your permission, I will.
Yeah, it was quite a straightforward reply, Councillor Thomas, but I'm sure Mr. Pegram will just confirm what he said.
Yeah, just to repeat that then, I hope I get it similar to where I did before. Oh, sorry, let's go back. So this part of the site is in outline only, with all matters reserved except for access. The principal point of access would be here. And as you saw from the photographs, that junction or the bell mouth has already been formed into that part of the site. You'll see that the site is abutted by a footpath that runs all the way around where I'm indicating. So there would be opportunities as part of the layout considerations to create pedestrian connections if that's considered necessary, obviously. In addition, there is a public footpath which comes along Lambia Lane, runs through the neighbouring garden centre site, has been the subject of a diversion order. So when it gets to this point where I'm indicating, it turns left, it crosses over the road and then follows the footpath round to link in with the main footpath that runs up through Melton Road. There would be no pedestrian or vehicle link between the garage elements and the outline element to the north. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. Did you get that time, Councillor Thomas?
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. And your other point about the or question about the SIL stroke 106 is quite very technical, more of a procedural type of question, but hopefully that has helped you. Right, Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few points, and some of them are observations, and one of them is perhaps more clearly a question. So my first observation is I really don't like these hybrid applications, and I recognise the applicant has every right to submit one, and there's nothing we can do about that. But they create codependencies between the various parts of the plan, make approval of one without the other impossible. And I seem to remember that it was this site or the neighbouring site the last time we looked at a hybrid application of this sort. So they are quite problematic, I find, but they're right, we can't do anything about that. My first observation is about the car showroom. There's a great deal, I mean, the presenter, the agent made the point, and the point is made in the report that it is, if you like, a sort of iconic building, that it will be a prestige building. And the report says the proposed design of the car showroom is considered suitable and of a standard which would be welcomed in this area. I don't know what evidence we have for that, or that the design and the impact of the design is in keeping with the surrounding area, having seen the proposed, the diagrams of the proposed building. I'm not sure about that case, but more importantly, and that's an issue of taste in many respects, more importantly, the point you said that, of course, Porsche may decide it doesn't then want to take forward this site for any reason, unlikely as that might be. And we've no guarantees, I presume, unless we would have to come back for another planning application, that any building subsequent to the Porsche application would have to have a similar standard of design and prestigious nature, if you like, as a key building on that development. So that's the question. My bigger concern, though, is about the community use. A lot of the objectors' comments were around whether or not this would form a village centre, if you like, a community centre, where people could interact, people could meet, and where it would create a heart of the community or go some way to doing so. I think the agent referred to community retail units, which I'm not really sure what they are, but we're talking just 4 retail units with such a varied range of potential uses that there's no mix in there that would ensure that people would visit it as a community hub, if you see what I mean. Now, I know there are limits to what you can do in terms of attracting businesses, but in theory, for example, you could have 4 vets next to each other, which would not form an attractive community centre. And with no, other than fast food takeaways and takeaway coffee shops, no other sort of eating places in the area, it strikes me that a lot of the emphasis placed on this being a community space doesn't really add up. It doesn't really make a great compelling case to me. And I wonder if, therefore, there is any sort of public realm design around the area of the shop units that would enable and encourage people to meet, COVID notwithstanding. But in terms of public realm, benches, seating area, anything that creates a kind of community space in the absence of a pub or a restaurant or any other potential meeting place, because otherwise it potentially strikes me as a rather sterile environment and doesn't satisfy the need for this or the desire by the local residents for it to be a community hub. And I apologise that I've gone on at some length about that, but I think it's important, given the scale of this development, that we're satisfied on those matters.
No, don't worry, you weren't going on. That's absolutely fine. That's what we're here for. We're here to raise points and ask questions. I suspect we'll be told that with regards to whether Porsche occupy the building or whether another make occupy the building, what we're deciding tonight, certainly on the full application side of this application, is the design of the building that we've got in front of us at the moment. So perhaps forget there's a Porsche sign on the building, where it's the building is where we may or may not give permission for that tonight, and where you're coming from with that. Hybrid applications, well, we'll all have our views about those, but to coin a phrase, we are where we are. An application is before us. Planning law and legislation allows an applicant to put such an application in, a hybrid application as it's called in this case, whether we like it or not. And it may or may not be ideal, but those are the goalposts and parameters that we have to work within. As with any other planning application, we make a decision based on what's before us as application. But the other points, Mr. Pegram, could you come back on those, especially the suggestions about public realm and community facilities, etc.
Yes, Chairman. Just to echo your comment, without dwelling on it too much, that the user is not something you are being considered to consider, but the appearance of the building as you saw it is a planning consideration. Obviously, if someone wants to build something different, they'd have to come back with another application. In terms of the public realm area, Chairman, just to reiterate, this element of the application, oh, it's gone again. This element of the application is in outline only, so we don't know the final layout in terms of whether there might be seating outside the shops or anything of that nature. It is a wide range of uses, and I think that's deliberate, Chairman, to try and ensure that the scheme is viable and can attract some appropriate uses. The uses I mentioned, in terms of the D1 and D2 uses particularly, do include things like community halls, gyms, and that type of thing. So clearly, I'm not sure there's any hard marketing that's gone on in terms of, if that's the opposite to soft marketing, but there's any hard marketing that's gone on in respect to those units to attract any operators at the moment. What I would say is that in terms of what was approved previously, Chairman, the food store was sat in this area down the bottom, a 4,000 square metre food store. Everything in front of that was then a car park, with the 4 units sat roughly where they are shown on this plan. So in terms of, if you like, the fallback position or the extant consent, it's very similar, in fact, to what you're being asked to consider this evening. The other factor, Chairman, I would make is that it's probably wise or relevant to consider this in the wider context. There are play spaces approved as part of the urban extension. There's a country park which is yet to come online in one of the later phases. There's also the school with its community usage, albeit potentially restricted to out of school hours. So there is, if you like, other elements of the wider allocation that would hopefully create that community cohesion and hub and places to meet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is that helpful, Councillor Brennan?
Yes, I think so. I'm still.
Can I just build on a comment you made, Councillor Brennan, with regards to things like benches, for example, seats and things? Would it be possible at some stage, whether as part of the full application or maybe as when a future full application comes in, to put either advisory suggestions, recommendations in for providing such facilities as a general facility, for want of a better word? Is that a practical thing to perhaps ask?
I think if you were going to, Chairman, as an advisory, now would be the appropriate time so that it potentially informed the design process for the outline element. As I say, clearly we don't know yet what may come forward in that area, the final details. But if you were thinking of advisories, now would be the time. I would suggest it's something along the lines about seeking to ensure that the details provide a meeting place or a community hub for the local community. Although I think that's known by the applicant already through our discussions.
Right.
I would like to see that then, if others agree.
Well, we keep that thought for the moment. So I think that's an important point, and to just keep in our minds. Right, Councillor Verdi, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick up on a couple of areas, really, and the first of those is throughout the report there was references to the particular proposal being, for want of a better word, weak in terms of landscaping. Now, I know with regards to this whole development, when we've considered other elements of the whole proposal, we've been very careful to consider the approach to landscaping and softening the landscape, both in terms of the approach into the area and within the developments themselves. So I'd like to really clarify with our officers in terms of this particular proposal, what action we may be taking in terms of imposing further conditions, if not already within the proposal. That's the first area. The second one is more specifically related to the noise and also the potential increase in traffic due to the dealership. Now, in terms of the noise references throughout the report, paragraph 77 refers to the ambient noise levels on Melton Road exceeding that which would be created by the dealership. Now, that is fine, and it says that is within acceptable levels in terms of the sensitive receptors. However, I think it would be useful to understand what the parameters are around those sensitivity receptors and how close we are to them being acceptable or not acceptable. And similarly, related to noise stroke traffic, the transport survey, or statement rather, paragraph 89 rather, I think, refers to considerably less trips with regards to this current proposal compared to what was being outlined previously. For example, I think when the pub was being proposed. So again, I think assurances or clarification with regards to the magnitude of those trips and how much they have gone down, so that we can understand in terms of this particular proposal, the dealership, both noise, trips, and in terms of the appearance, what conditions may be imposed or what the current proposals are actually putting in front of us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Verdi. Well, of course, much of the ambient noise that you get from the road, Melton Road, will be the sort of engine and tyre noise of passing traffic, which is at times very busy along there. But Mr. Pegram, I'm sure you can give a far more technical and proper response to.
I'm afraid I may let you down there, Chairman. Noise is a very specific science, and I would not pretend to understand it or even preach it, to be quite honest. All I would say is that the application was accompanied by a noise assessment. That noise assessment was assessed by your environmental health officers, who have found that the proposals are acceptable. The main issue is in relation to noise impact on existing residents and also those that might occupy the care facility within the outline element of the application. Obviously, again, this is located on the opposite side of Melton Road to what I would consider to be the nearest noise receptors, and that's those properties that are in the David Wilson Barratt development on the opposite side of the road. There is reference in the report, Chairman. There's an issue that's raised by one of the objectors, I think, because without knowing the final details, there may be a requirement for certain windows within the care facility to be fixed shut and some other form of mechanical ventilation provided. As I say, we don't know the extent of that because that is yet to be determined in terms of the layout and the design of the building. It's not an uncommon requirement if you're next to a road, and indeed the building I'm sat in now has no opening windows. It has a climate control system, so it is considered to be an acceptable way of addressing noise issues. The other aspect that the environmental health officer raised, which again we don't know, is where the location of any outdoor spaces for the residents of the care facility would be and what the noise impact on that area would be. So again, that's a bit of a wait to see till the next stage part of the process. However, Chairman, I would reiterate that the environmental health officers have scrutinised those reports and they do not object to the current proposals before us. In terms of landscaping, Chairman, condition 6, you'll see that in fact the conditions are broken down into those that relate to the full planning permission section and those that relate to the outline. Condition 6 of the conditions on page 40 requires a landscaping scheme in respect of the car dealership element of the proposal. We do feel that needs strengthening, hence the reason for that condition. In terms of the outline element, landscaping is a reserved matter. So when the reserved matters application comes in, we would expect that to be accompanied by a detailed landscape proposal. In terms of the trip generation issue, Chairman, the comparison was with this scheme against the approved food store scheme. So it wasn't with the pub in, it was effectively this application against the application for what is referred to as the Waitrose development. The main difference in that respect, Chairman, is that with the exception of delivery vehicles, all traffic went out through the Rose Way junction onto Melton Road. This scheme clearly splits the traffic movement, so the element, the shop element and the care facility would go out through Rose Way. All the traffic associated with the car dealership would go out through Landmere Lane. If anything, Chairman, the one sensitive area that was looked at very carefully was that junction of Landmere Lane with Melton Road. It hadn't been demonstrated initially that there was sufficient capacity in that junction to take all the traffic from the car dealership. Further information was submitted, that was considered by the Highway Authority, and they are now satisfied that that junction can cope within limits to cater for the traffic for the car showroom. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a case where the Highway Authority initially did raise an objection or a concern then, but they went back for further information and they are now satisfied with that.
Either objection or concerns, Chairman, yes.
Right, and also the point about the location or positioning of the possible or the proposed care home, again, that will be looked at in more detail when a full application comes in.
Yes,
so when, I mean, that's got to happen by a certain time. So at some point in the future, no doubt the same questions will be asked either at the committee meeting or probably long before that during the application process, because the layout that we're looking at on the plans here for that, again, is just an idea. It's an indicative layout. So these more detailed questions about that aspect will be for another day when that application is discussed. Right. I don't see many other hands, people wishing to jump in. So are we getting the Councillor Clark? Oh, sorry, I've just seen a whole load of movement. Right.
Sorry, I've had my hand up for a heck of a long time.
Oh, sorry, I genuinely didn't see you. I'm really sorry, Councillor.
Oh, are you not? If you look at the list of participants, you'll.
Oh, that's beyond me. I'm just looking
you'll
at
see the raised hands.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at all the pictures.
Oh, you're not using the. Oh, so we need to wave at the screen and not.
Sorry, probably my mistake. So, okay.
We also have Councillor Healy waiting after Councillor Clark, Chairman.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, just Chairman. Yes, this is quite a bit of a not quite, but maybe a bit of a minefield. This application, isn't it? And I do share and echo a lot of what Councillor Brennan said in terms of approach to hybrid applications, because it does make it very awkward, because you might think that practically everything is absolutely wonderful except for one particular aspect that you disagree with, and there are different ways of arguing that. And I suppose actually, I hope she'll forgive me, but I'm interpreting when she went, I think the translation for that might be, I will suggest the translation was, well, it would be nice if there was an area where people could meet locally and not be told to have to go off to a park somewhere else remotely. The whole point of the benches is that it's to try and create a bit of community cohesion and way of people meeting each other and having a chat and socializing, etc., rather than just specifically going on business to a shop. It is a little bit disappointing in terms of some of the lack of, well, when I say lack of community facilities, what I am trying to say is the community facilities that potentially we believe that at least some of the community are looking for. So one of the questions, and it has already been alluded to, and this is a question for Mr. Pegram, are we able to provide an indication as to what we would like to see in the facilities? The trouble is, as we've discovered now, is there is such a wide-ranging list of uses. I suppose really the question may well be, when it comes to the reserve matters or the full application, is there an opportunity, if they decided to actually apply for a pub within that reserve matters, is that within the realms of possibility, and we could maybe judge that? How much leeway do we have in determining what facilities in the reserve matters may or may not be acceptable? We've got the access approved, or potentially approved tonight if it goes through, but what about the actual other facilities? How much leeway have we actually got to control that? I suspect the answer is going to be very little. Just changing tack in terms of the drainage, which I think Councillor Thomas referred to, ironically or coincidentally, I did make inquiries about that quite separately, and I've been assured that that balancing pond that is to the south of this site is now redundant by virtue of the other balancing pond, which is now in the residential site further north. And I suppose my other question, which I haven't had a chance to look up, is what does policy 20 of the local plan part 1 actually say? Are we actually going against, and are we missing something in that policy? because unfortunately I haven't got it in front of me. So I don't know if Mr. Pegram could remind us as to what that actually says. I think that's probably about it for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I would imagine Mr. Pegram knows the policy numbers off the top of his head, and or if not, certainly we'll have an idea of them. But can you? Did you get all those, Mr. Pegram?
I did, Chairman. Whilst I was listening to Councillor Clark, I was busily bringing up policy 20.
I thought you might be, yes, on your other computer.
So I think right. I think in terms of, there is an aspiration, certainly, Chairman, with local members and with the community for community facilities to be provided on this site. And certainly in a discussion with the one of the ward councillors, he felt, this was his words, he thought this was the last opportunity to try and attract a community facility to this development. As I say, Chairman, the uses that are being sought include community hall or community facilities. So if this were to be granted and there was a provider that wants to come forward and provide a community hall either in one of the 4 units or as a revised layout to the scheme, that may occur. Clearly, the advice we give to you all the time is that you have to consider what is before you this evening. And the scheme is for 4 units, which include a variety of uses. In terms of the policy 20, I don't know if there's a specific part that you're interested in, Councillor Clark, but certainly in terms of neighbourhood centre, and as I said at the beginning, the neighbourhood centre was further north in this development. It's moved effectively, but effectively there was a requirement for a neighbourhood centre of an appropriate scale to be provided to serve the proposed development, and a community hall of an appropriate scale to serve the new development should also be provided. Just in terms of how that's been addressed so far to date, there is an extant outline planning permission for 600 dwellings on this site with a Section 106 agreement. That also included the provision of a school building, and the requirements of the 106 was that the school building should be for effectively a shared community use, so it's a school with community facilities. The specification for that community facility, which is spelt out in the Section 106 agreement, doesn't necessarily insist on daytime use. So there is this issue, because of safeguarding issues with a school, that the community facility may not be available during the day. It would be available outside areas and the inside areas during the evening and weekends. As far as our policy team are concerned, in discussions with them, they are satisfied that that meets the requirement of the policy for the Ed Walton urban extension. I think it would be difficult to refuse this application on the basis that it didn't deliver a community hall. That you have to look at the wider development to see, if you like, in terms of the wider development, whether it complies with the policy. And through the provision of the school and the community facilities within that school, it's felt by officers that that does satisfy the policy requirement. It may not, admittedly, meet the expectations of residents who may want something which is available 24/7 during the day as well. But as I say, that's the view of your officers.
Councillor Clark, do you want to come back?
Yeah, well, yes. It's, sorry, I'll be unfair. I was going to say that's as clear as mud. That would be unfair. Unfair on Mr. Pegram. I didn't mean that. What I mean is it's still confusing and still not, absolutely clear as to what we are discussing. Because what is worrying me is that the car showroom, absolutely no issue with that at all. It's the other facilities and the other part of the hybrid. And I've actually probably no problem with the rest of the application if we know that we've still got that flexibility to adapt and provide the local facilities, community facilities, when the reserve matters actually come to place. I'm still not convinced that we would have any control over those reserve matters. I think they're going to be pretty much presented to us as a fait accompli, and I don't think that there's going to be much wriggle room to provide community facilities as was intended originally. That's my concern. I'm sort of thinking aloud, Mr. Chairman, because on these new developments, we've got to get these things right, and we've got to make sure that we do provide facilities for the local community, because we don't want people just to go home and lock the door and stay in their houses, or you know, we want a bit of community interaction. Let's put it that way. So we need to plan to make sure that we can facilitate that interaction. That's what's worrying me, and I'm not sure we're going to have that flexible control when the reserve matters come.
Okay, well, I know Mr. Pegram wants to come back on that, but isn't that something that we would possibly have a say in when a full application comes in, either at the decision-making stage or during the negotiation stage for some community facilities? But Mr. Pegram, you wanted to come back, so
Chairman, yeah, just to pick up on your point first, in terms of the outline, you would be approving that flexible uses as part of the outline. So you would be accepting that those units could be used for any of those uses that I referred to previously. The complicating factor, which I need to get my head around a little bit, Chairman, is that very shortly there are new use class order regulations coming into force, which may change the whole playing field completely. Fundamentally, Chairman, if I can draw members' attention to paragraph 42 of the report, and those were the final comments from your planning policy manager on the current scheme, which is before you this evening. And fundamentally, Chairman, he said, the last sentence, these uses are generally considered to be community uses and with accord with policy 20 of the core strategy and the Ed Walton Development Framework SPD.
have you got that, Councillor Clark?
Yes, I'll just scanning through it as Mr. Pegram was reading it. It's just that if I thought there was some doubt of being able to provide community facilities, then one could say, well, you try to refuse this application, which but there are no real grounds to refuse this application by the nature of the way the hybrid is formulated, with all that list of flexible uses. It's very difficult to find a reason, which is why I'm trying to turn it round. And how can we incorporate some assurance that we are going to get those flexible community facilities? And as Councillor Brennan indicated, that you don't get 4 vets or 4 takeaways or 4 this, that and the other. Because I do recall, and I'm showing my age now, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, that way back we had policies that related to a certain percentage. I know it related particularly to financial institutions. You know, we'd have a maximum percentage on the high street of certain uses, so that it would protect against, for instance, having 100% banks or 100% building societies or anything like that. So I'm searching and I can't find a way of making sure that we've got that assurance that we can have those community facilities flexibly available when we come to the reserve matters.
Right. I understand the searching and the dilemma you have. I think Mr. Pegram indicated to come back, and then I've got one other speaker on here who will be Councillor Healy, because I've now worked out how to look at the participants list at the same time as looking at the screen. So, and I see the little hand symbol. So if Mr. Pegram just comes back on your dilemma, and then we'll go to Councillor Healy. Mr. Pegram.
Chairman, I just wanted to explain, for the benefit of what I would call perhaps newer members of the committee, the issue that Councillor Clark is raising. We had a policy in the non-statutory replacement local plan, and we've also got policies in local plan part 2, which seek to protect the vitality and viability of our shopping centres, mainly local centre, neighbourhood centres, district centres alike. And the idea of that is that, yes, we don't want to see the retail function lost in a local centre, and we don't want the percentage to drop below a certain level, and therefore we have policies and had policies to seek to control that. This would not, in terms of the status of what would be approved here, that this wouldn't benefit from that protection, to be quite honest. I can see the dilemma that Councillor Clark and other members probably have. I'm finding it difficult to see how we can control the percentage usage so we don't, as you say, end up with 4 vets or 4 takeaways. Because if you did that, you could potentially be precluding, if it was a community hall type facility coming in there, you might preclude that through the condition if it's not worded very carefully.
Mr. Chairman, could I just quickly ask Mr. Pegram, turn it around the other way then. When the reserve matters come, what powers have we got to either approve or not approve a mix of uses?
You've just taken the word out of my mouth there, Councillor Clark, because I was thinking along the same lines.
I think, Chairman, the answer to that is that I cannot give you any assurance on this at the moment. You are being asked to give a flexible use permission to those units. In terms of the reserve matters, arguably, all that's going to look at is the design and scale of the building, not the occupiers. It could be submitted as a terrace of 4 shops with no names, no uses identified, and then they're marketed, and that's when the final uses are secured. But it's not something, the uses itself is not something you're going to be able to control through the reserve matters application.
Could it be argued that in the cold light of day, if 4 units, 4 shops, call them what you will, were given permission for, come the day that they are built, then surely it's any commercial operator or community operator who's going to want to operate one of those units will make their decision based on what other types of businesses and services are there. So maybe there is a little bit of self-policing in that. I don't know, maybe I'm clutching at straws. It's just a thought going through my mind. But.
Chairman, my understanding on this from talking to the agent is that they when they first submitted this scheme, it didn't include the shops. And we were concerned because we have fought hard to try and get the local, what we call the local centre or the neighbourhood centre into this scheme. Clearly, we had a scenario where when Waitrose walked away from this site, we had various developers coming forward wanting to nibble away at bits of the site. And my concern as your officer was that we would lose the opportunity to deliver the neighbourhood centre that is required by the policy. So we've now got a situation, Chairman, where you have a comprehensive scheme for the site, albeit part of it is in outline, but the scheme is delivering what we have fought long and hard to try and deliver. Now, when it first came forward, it had a pub in it. My discussions with the agent and the case officer's discussions with the agent is we wanted the 4 shops. The indication was that from soft marketing, there wasn't any appetite for those shops because the development on the south side of Lambere Lane. Only time will tell ultimately, I think, whether there is any appetite for those units for the types of uses that the community wants. My understanding, Chairman, some people want a pub. Some people want shops. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but effectively they don't see Aldi, or the people I've spoken to don't necessarily see Aldi as the substitute for your convenience store where you pop in and buy a newspaper and a bottle of milk. And that's the suggestion, one of the suggestions of what people want to see, or certainly when I spoke to one of the ward councillors, they'd like to see in that parade of shops. Now, if you wanted to avoid it all being takeaways in particular, as I say, it's very difficult to come up with a condition. You could have a condition that said no more than 2 or no more than 50% of the units shall be A3 or A5 if you're wanting to restrict certain proliferations. But it might be a bit difficult, and it's difficult, and I'm worried about how that might affect possible other opportunities for other uses coming into that area.
Okay, the final speaker then on this, because I think we will need to come to a decision fairly soon. Councillor Healy, I know you've been very patient waiting.
Well, yes, I'll be very brief, because really it's all been said, frankly. I endorse fully the train of thought on the outline retail side of the business. We mustn't forget we have got a big school coming together with hundreds of children locally, so I think we need, if we can, to have some sort of control, certainly not fast food. The access, sorry, Mr. Pegram, yeah, has mentioned community, and I was going to make the point about this community facility attached to the school. Now, granted, it's post-school use. The residents clearly want some sort of a community facility, don't quite know what is planned or what the detail would be, but perhaps that might go some way to give them what they want. Access, Mr. Pegram, worries me a little bit for the showroom. I mean, Landmeal Lane at the moment is extremely busy, will be more so with Aldi. There's a couple of retail units. There's the nursing home, there's nursery, so on and so forth. And granted, the access to the showrooms isn't too far from the junction. But again, I think you've answered that and addressed what I was concerned about, some potential problems, more so as you try and get onto Melton Road. But clearly, I think you've addressed that. That's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Well, of course, as we said earlier on, highways did raise a concern. Some might say that's unusual when we've had other planning applications, but those concerns were answered, and then so highways were then happy and accepting of the proposals. Do you want to add anything to that, Mr.
No, that's
Pegram?
fine, thank you. No, that's it. It's all been said, really.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Pegram?
No, Chairman.
Righty-ho. And Councillor Brennan?
Just want to ask if we're going to move to support or not this recommendation, that we look at a condition as discussed, that we don't lose that thought, please, that there should be something at this stage, if this is the right stage to do it, that talks about the importance of some community public realm space alongside the retail units that enables people to meet informally, or whatever form of words works most. I think you know what I'm trying to drive at.
I think I do, and I think Mr. Pegram knows as well, don't you, Mr. Pegram?
Chairman, I think what I would suggest is an informative along the lines of, in considering the application, members of the Planning Committee felt that the reserve matters should incorporate an element of open space adjacent the shop units to provide a community facility.
Oh, I just saw a thumb go up then, Councillor Brennan. It's, yeah, so I assume that's...
I thought you did quite well, but I would like to see public realm, so that it's a nice area for people to gather, not just a community facility. So, you know, planters seats, something appropriate to the style of the development that enables people to mingle. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I was thinking on my feet, Chairman, but public realm is more the word I was thinking of than community facility.
Thank you.
Chairman, could I just ask, but if it's as an informative, presumably that doesn't have any teeth, and that if it was ignored, there was nothing we could do about it.
Chairman, if the reserve matters came forward with absolutely no open space around it, arguably we do have control, because you could refuse that application. Whether it succeed at appeal is another matter, but obviously you do have control over the layout. Layout is a reserve matter that needs to be dealt with at the appropriate stage.
Okay.
And also, I think that the applicant is no doubt very clear of the thought of the committee here. Councillor Thomas, briefly. Councillor Thomas.
I'd like to propose that we refuse the application on 2 grounds. The first ground being that it is contrary to policy 20C of the core strategy, which requires a neighbourhood centre, and this doesn't provide a neighbourhood centre, and the second ground would be on the basis of the design of the car sales room not fitting in with the local scene. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Bansal.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, Councillor Thomas. I think it's important about the community facility. There's just so many questions around it. Just reading back what the residents have said, the comments from Mr. Daddiwal as well, the local resident. I appreciate how many residents in the groups, how many you've spoken to, but I'm sure there must be some good numbers in there. So I'll second what Councillor Thomas just said.
Right. So I think you're making a note there, Mr. Pegram and Mrs. Sells. Do you want to add anything? Are you clear on the recommendation, the recommendation made there?
Yeah, specifically in terms of contrary to policy 20C, you're specifically referring to a community hall or facility.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
I'm referring to the requirement for a neighbourhood centre. I haven't got policy 20 in front of me, but I did read it beforehand. And there is a requirement for this development to provide a community centre. The school is not providing any meeting place for people during the day, and there's nothing in this proposal that is doing that either. Even with Councillor Brennan's seating area, there is no meeting space for people during the day. The row of shops could quite easily be for takeaways with no footfall at all during the day, given the flexible uses. So, you know, that's my proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Well, we've got a proposal to refuse for those reasons, moved and seconded. So we better go to a vote on this now. So that everybody is clear on what we're voting for, this is a proposal for refusing the application for the reasons just discussed or just explained by Councillor Thomas and Councillor Bansal. So I think Mrs. Sells, do you want to do the roll call now for the member's decision on that, please?
Mr. Pegram, were you okay? I saw your hand go up.
Oh, sorry, did I miss a hand go up then?
Chairman, just in terms of the, if you like, the officer's view on those reasons for refusal, clearly design is a subjective matter, a matter which I would not contest with you. You're totally entitled to consider design as a matter of whether it's appropriate. Clearly, the use to a certain extent does depict the form of that building. Just to reiterate the comments you made earlier, no, we've got no control over who the dealership is, but the building would have to be built in accordance with the plans that are before you this evening, unless they applied for a separate permission. I'm struggling a little bit, Chairman, with the community hall use, particularly given that there is an extant permission on this site for a supermarket with 4 retail shops and no community hall. If you like, you need to look at the allocation as a whole. It's unfortunate that, like with these big schemes, they come forward in a piecemeal fashion. But arguably, you're effectively saying this particular landowner has got to provide the community hall. Your policy officers are of the view that this scheme is policy compliant. It does deliver a neighbourhood centre as envisaged by the policy. The retail store, the supermarket, was never part of the local centre. That, if you like, was an addition that came in, but facilitated and was the catalyst to the delivery of this urban extension. So I do have a little bit of difficulty with that reason for refusal, Chairman, particularly given that there is, albeit not necessarily providing daytime access, there is a community facility in the offing through the school, and the Section 106 monies were predicated on the basis that that school would deliver a community facility, albeit limited access. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Well, Mrs. Sells, is there anything, are you saying anything on that? Or, oh, sorry, I thought you were indicating to speak.
I'm sorry.
Okay, right. So, members, you've heard the arguments for and against then, and also the concern from the officers about the reasons for refusal. but we have had the proposal moved and seconded. So I think we've had a long discussion tonight. We've been discussing this for probably about an hour and a half or so. And it is a very complicated application, very detailed. So we better go to a vote now. So to be clear, we're voting on the revised proposal as moved by Councillor Thomas and Bansal to reject or refuse permission for the reasons they give. In a moment, Mrs. Sell will go through the names of councillors, asking for councillors to vote for or against that. So it's either for refusing or against refusing. I think I've got that right. So Mrs. Sells, could you start the process, please?
Yeah, I'm going after. So Councillor Bansal,
For.
Councillor Brennan,
Against.
Councillor Butler,
Against?
Councillor Clark,
Against.
Councillor Healy,
Against.
Councillor Howitt,
Sorry, for.
Councillor Murray,
For.
Councillor Purdy-Horan. You're still muted.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Stockwood,
Against.
Councillor Thomas, and Councillor Verdi.
Against.
So that motion falls.
So that motion falls. Do you just want to clarify the numbers on that, please?
Yeah, I had, oh no, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 fours, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 against.
Righty-ho, so that proposal falls. So we now need to move on to another recommendation, please. So who would like to start this, please? Councillor Stockwood?
Thank you,
Oh,
Chairman.
sorry.
I think it's obvious to me from all the discussion tonight that when the application comes before us for the outline part of this, other than what's a reserved matter, the main access tonight, that it's going to have a hard time if it doesn't include what we've all talked about this evening. It's going to be scrutinised quite well, so I have no hesitation in proposing that we go with the recommendation to approve this application.
Thank you. And also with the other
Yes.
items that we discussed earlier about
Yes, with the advisory.
Yes. Thank you. Do you have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Verdi. Thank you. Right. Councillor Thomas, you want to say something?
I'd like to propose another condition, and that is, as the outline part includes access, I would like to see a condition that details the pedestrian and cycle access from the surrounding area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But wouldn't that be part of the reserved item?
I believe that access is part of, this is all matters reserved apart from access. And foot and cycle access is as important in my view as traffic.
Councillor Stockwood, are you happy to incorporate that?
If the officer thinks that
Are we able to, I should say?
yes. If I personally thought it had already been explained.
Well, I thought so as well, as part of the reserved matters side of things. I thought that was covered.
Chairman, just to try and help out, I think didn't Mr. Pegram refer more to the footpath diversion rather than the actual cycling aspect of it? and the government is now pushing cycling hard. So whether it can, if Mr. Pegram can just confirm, is that part of the outline for definite, or is there still an opportunity to approve the cycling access at the time of reserve matters?
Chairman, sorry. Chairman, I think it's an interesting one. I need to refresh my memories on this, perhaps. But I guess when we talk about access, the first thought is about vehicle access, because you're talking about highway safety, etc. We do get applications for residential schemes that identify the principal point of access, and then when they submit their reserve matters, they come in with details of other access points. Given, I don't think it's too much of an onerous requirement, Chairman, because there are plenty of opportunities to link in with the footpath and arguably cycle path routes in the area. If that's a condition members would like to see, I've got no strong feelings about it.
Mrs. Sells is indicating.
Mr. Pegram, condition 19.
Ooh.
Already deals with footpath 5, specifically to pedestrian and cycling to and from the site in the wider area.
Yeah, that deals, I took that to deal specifically with footpath 5 and how that will link in. Sorry, can I just share my screen again for you? So obviously, footpath 5, I think, is a footpath, not a bridleway. So it's footpath, but runs through there and exists. Clearly, we can't require the applicant to do anything on land outside of their control. When it hits this point here, it does have to run through their site to then link up with the footpaths that are provided as part of the adopted or to be adopted highway. I think that condition relates, in my interpretation, to that element of the scheme. I think what Councillor Thomas is seeking is assurance that there will be perhaps other links, so that someone, if they want to come from here and get to the shops, they haven't got to come all the way around to get in there.
Is that a fair assumption, Councillor Thomas? I think you said yes. Yes. Right. So, Councillor Stockwood, with the addition of Councillor Thomas has added the explanation as to the way we could possibly incorporate that for Mr. Pegram. Would you be happy to include that?
Not unhappy, Chairman.
Yeah, I was just asking Councillor Stockwood.
Yes, yes, happy to include it.
Righty-ho. And Councillor Birdie, are you happy with that as well, to add that in?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I hope that's clear, everybody. So we're now going to take another vote. This is a vote on the proposal moved by Councillor Stockwood and seconded by Councillor Verdi to grant permission with the conditions as discussed and the added information as well. So, Mrs. Sells, please.
Yeah, alphabetical again. Councillor Bansal.
Against.
Councillor Brennan. For. Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Healy.
For.
Councillor Howitt.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
Against.
Councillor Perdue-Horan.
For.
Councillor Stockwood.
For.
Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas. You're on mute.
Against.
And Councillor Verdi.
For.
Thank you.
So can I confirm, Councillor Thomas, you were against it, but we put in the suggestion you wanted?
Yes, I mean, it makes it better.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Mrs. Sells.
That motion carries. That was 7 for and 4 against.
So 7 for, 4 against. So that means permission is granted as per the report, plus the additions we've made in the notes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we've had a long discussion on that, and I hope people understand that it is a complex application. It was very important that we did have a detailed discussion because it is a very important, big application. Now we have other applications to discuss tonight. I'm aware that we've been sitting down now for an hour and a half. Would people like to take a 5-minute break to stretch your legs, get a glass of water, etc.? Yes. Shall we do that? So what time is it now? It's 20 past 8. Can we make it 5 minutes? I aim to be back at 8:25, please, if everyone's all right with that. See you in a moment. Thank you.
But during that,
Eh?
I occupied myself by sending out the documents to Bingham Town councillors.
Oh, yeah.
So
You expect the deluge, do we?
I got John Lewis back to me. He's asking who was the report author. And he hasn't read it. It's clear by his question, he hasn't bloody read it.
Mm.
Because otherwise he would know who the fucking author was. Honestly.
Are we back on? Right. Okay, I think we're all back. Thank you. I hope you didn't mind having a break. Staring at a screen and talking, concentrating is actually, it wears your eyes a bit, I find. Anyway, there we are. So on to our second application tonight, and this is for 2 Johns Road, Radcliffe-on-Trent, a proposed demolition of the existing dwelling and construction of 2 new 3-bedroom dwellings fronting Johns Road. It's a semi-detached pair, and 2 new bedroom dwellings fronting Grantham Road, which is a semi-detached pair, including landscaping and the creation of drop curb. This is a resubmission. And also to remind colleagues that 2 of our members, Councillors Clark and Brennan, because they're the ward members, they won't be part of the discussion. Mr. Pegram, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm off mute. Yes?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the next application, as you say, relates to Johns Road, Radcliffe-on-Trent. So this is the site in question, Chairman. It's a currently occupied by a detached bungalow. The site gets its access from Johns Road currently, but does have a frontage through onto Grantham Road A52 at the back here. Obviously, you can see from the plan that there are other properties that front Grantham Road at this point, and also properties that front Carter Avenue to the side. That's the aerial photograph, just confirming the details you've already seen in the plan. And to take you through some photographs, so this is stood on Johns Road, looking in a generally westerly direction. This is the garage which serves the property that fronts Carter Road, and the property is just in the background here, sticking above the roof of the garage. That's looking from the opposite direction. So again, you've got a detached house, and then it drops down to the bungalow, which is on the application site. Just moving along the road, looking at that character and the details of boundary treatment, etc. And then we now start to pick up the relationship between the neighbouring property to the application site and the application site itself. This is again standing further along the road, looking back in a westerly direction towards the application site, with that neighbouring property that effectively backs on to the side boundary of the application site with its garage, which you saw earlier. This is the application property in question. There has been some demolition work started on the building, as you can see, and it's been boarded up. Again, looking at a slightly different angle. And then looking across effectively from the boundary across the 2 properties to the west and towards the properties in the distance. That's looking back the other way, so that's the garage of the neighbouring property. And again, just picking up the details. This is understood to be a landing window, Chairman, and possibly a secondary window or utility ensuite room, perhaps. That's the back of the bungalow in question that's to be demolished. And again, just looking at the relationship between that property and the neighbouring detached house. And then standing further back in the garden. And then just generally looking across the site to neighbouring dwellings. That's looking northerly towards the Grantham Road frontage. So the bungalow that's to be demolished is currently behind the photographer. And then this is taken close to the northeastern corner of the site, picking up the neighbouring bungalow which fronts onto Grantham Road. That's looking at the opposite corner, the northwestern corner, fronting onto Grantham Road. And this is now stood on Grantham Road. So again, you've got a mix in dwelling types in the area. You've got a detached house here, then a bungalow, then you get to the application site, which is behind the hedgerow, which I'm indicating with the pointer. And then standing, just looking along Grantham Road to give you an idea of visibility and highway issues. So that's the existing property which you've seen in the pictures. The proposal is for a pair of semi-detached properties fronting John's Road, and then a pair fronting onto Grantham Road with a new access out onto Grantham Road. These two would be 3-bedroom properties. The two at the other end of the site would be 2-bedroom properties. In terms of the design, Chairman, this is the pair that would front onto John's Road. So this shows you the sort of character and appearance of them, very traditional looking, picking up on design features of neighbouring properties, etc. Parking would be provided, 2 spaces for each dwelling in front of those properties. And then, again, that's the layout of the other half of the pair, again, confirming they're 3 bedrooms. And then these are the proposed properties that would front Grantham Road, more of a contemporary twist with large areas of glazing in the front, conventional pitched roofs, but as I say, having more of a contemporary appearance. Those properties would benefit, if I go back to the layout plan, from 4 parking spaces across the site there, with a turning facility this side, so that vehicles can reverse out of parking spaces, out and drive forwards out onto Grantham Road. Chairman, this is obviously within one of our key settlements, or settlement identified for growth. It is redevelopment of a site which is currently in residential use, occupied by a dwelling. It's considered that the principle of development is acceptable. So you're really looking here at matters of design, layout, character of the area, highway issues, etc. Again, all of which are dealt with in the report. Chairman, the scheme is considered by your officers to be acceptable and compliant with both our own local plan policies and the neighbourhood plan policies. And on that basis, the application is before you with a recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pegram. We have speakers on this item. We have 3 speakers. The first one is Mr. Simons, David Simons, who is the applicant's agent. So, Mr. Simons, I know you're here because I can see your name on the screen, and I know everyone's been sitting through the rest of the meeting as well, so thank you for your patience. So, as you know, you have up to 5 minutes to talk to us, and we can see you now as well. And 5 minutes is up, we have to say time is up. So as soon as you're ready, you can start addressing the
Brilliant. Can you hear me okay through the microphone? Is everything all right there?
Yes, I can hear you, I think.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to speak. Speaking on behalf of the applicant, Mr. McHugh, and I'm glad to be speaking with the support of the planning department in their recommendation for approval. But I just want to go through a little bit of the background of the kind of process we've gone through with this application. So the original application that was refused was submitted on the 15th of April 2019. So that was for a larger scope of development, including 2 detached properties that were 4 bedroom fronting John's Road, and a pair of semi-detached 4-bed properties to the rear. Since then, we've made this revised application, which has gone through further revisions throughout the planning process to kind of address issues in terms of the scale and density of the development, to make sure there's no impact on the neighbouring properties and the existing amenity. So the whole reason for this application came out of the fact our client, the applicant, has existing permission to demolish the existing bungalow and replace it with not to demolish it, sorry, but to extend it to create a 4-bedroom larger house. But there isn't demand for that kind of property in the area, especially with the current economic climate. There's a much more pressing need for affordable, smaller dwellings, and this has also come out of the planning process and the talks we've gone through. So in terms of the changes we've made throughout the process, we've introduced additional information in the form of an air quality assessment, noise assessment, an ecology report, as well as making significant amendments to the traffic layout and the parking provision on site that was touched on by Mr. Pegram. We've revised the scale of the dwellings in terms of their width, massing and height. And we've kind of revised the design of the pair of semi-detached dwellings to give them more of a distinct and separate style. And we've positioned and relocated windows to avoid any opportunities for overlooking whilst having consideration of separation distances and the minimum standards needed. So just to go through a couple of the main objections that have been raised. Obviously, a key one was relating to traffic, parking and highways. We feel this has been addressed with the turning facilities within the site and the level of parking provided. In terms of density and overdevelopment, we feel that the application would not represent overdevelopment because it meets or exceeds all of the minimum requirements set out by the Rushcliffe Design Guide in terms of garden sizes, garden depths, amenity space for each of the dwellings, and other kind of overlooking or privacy issues. We've addressed all of those, so in our view, the site can meet this density of development. In terms of the housing mix, this was raised as an issue by some objectors, but obviously the the housing mix, we've increased. Sorry, what was that?
It's okay. I thought we'd lost you for a moment, but I can still.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, brilliant. Yes, we've addressed the housing mix in terms of providing smaller scale, affordable dwellings with less bedroom adds to the requirements of the area. We've addressed all of the privacy and overlooking issues by obscurely glazing windows where necessary and ensuring separation distances. We've reduced the height of the building much lower than the neighbouring property by 1 metre and much lower than the previously approved development, the extensions to the bungalow. And the width of the semi-detached dwelling on Johns Road is actually narrower than the width of the existing bungalow or the previously approved scheme. And yeah, just another point that was raised was the fact that semi-detached dwellings might be out of character for the street, but just to point out that there are 3 other pairs of semi-detached dwellings on Johns Road, numbers 10 to 12, 15 to 13, 17 to 19, so we feel that it's appropriate in this setting. And just to add to that, in terms of diversity of properties on the street, there's a mixture of existing bungalows, detached and semi-detached properties. So just to summarise, I want to make it really clear that Mr. McHugh, the applicant, is a very conscientious builder that wants to develop this site in a positive way for the area. He's local to the area himself, and we think that this development will help to meet the growing need for affordable housing, especially in the current economic climate and the issues of the COVID outbreak. Yeah, I think that's everything we have to say there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simons. I know there's a few funny noises on the audio here, but I could hear you. I'm sure everyone else heard as well.
That's great. Sorry about that. I think it's the connection.
Well, we heard you. That's the main thing. So our next speaker on this is from the Radcliffe-on-Trent Parish Council, Anne MacLeod. Is Anne with us? Yes, I can see your name. Hello, Mrs. MacLeod.
Hello. Good evening.
I trust you've been here all evening, so
I have.
you again have up to 5 minutes to talk to us. Okay. And if you're still talking at 5 minutes, we have to ask you to stop. So as soon as you're ready, you can start talking to us.
Thank you very much. This planning application has been presented to Radcliffe-on-Trent Parish Council 3 times and has been rejected by us 3 times. It contradicts our neighbourhood plan policy 11, which is infill development, as it's over-intensive, we feel. The plot itself is very narrow, so 2 semi-detached homes will mean that those 2-storey buildings will be close to particularly number 4 Johns Road. The original dwelling, which has now been rendered derelict, was a modest bungalow. 4 properties on the same site, 2 being accessed by Johns Road, which is extremely narrow, and 2 being accessed directly from the Grantham A52 at the Bingham Road Carter Avenue junction is, in our opinion, unacceptable. When leaving the A52, Carter Avenue onto Johns Road is the safest and the busiest exit to the Harlequin estate area of Radcliffe. It's a very busy road, particularly at rush hour. 2 of the properties will be accessed directly from the A52. The houses are planned to be very close to the road itself. Air quality is probably an issue, as is noise pollution. The air quality report says the property is not at the curbside. It isn't, but it's close to it. Plot 4 particularly is approximately 8 metres away. Construction traffic would need access either from the A52, which would be hazardous, or via Johns Road, which is extremely narrow. Large vehicles would not be able to turn onto the site from Johns Road, and emergency vehicles would not be able to drive along Johns Road if construction vehicles were in the road. It is for this reason that Radcliffe-on-Trent Parish Council opposes this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's well within 5 minutes as well, so thank you. And our final speaker on this item is one of the ward members, Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. And I speak on behalf of the 3 ward borough councillors, so Councillor Upton and Councillor Brennan, and of course myself. And the reason that we object to this is because it does completely change the character of this particular area of Johns Road, and to some extent the Grantham Road as well, because the street scene will be altered. And when I say it's over intensive, I mean over intensive in terms of the width of the plot. When you look at the very first plan that Mr. Pegram showed you of the plan of Johns Road, you can see how spacious each house is on Johns Road. And I view this application as being fitting not just one court into a pint pot, but actually 2 courts into a pint pot, because you've got 2 pairs of dwellings going on what was previously 1 dwelling. There might well be a need for smaller dwellings, and I don't dispute that. There certainly is always a need for 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings, but this is the wrong location and would alter the character of the street scene. You'll notice on the plan, it shows 2 cars in front of each of the houses fronting onto Johns Road, right by the pavement, and that would be completely out of character with the rest of the street. If you remember from the photographs, there's a lot of hedges and brick walls, not just completely open frontages like that is shown. So having a pair of semi-detached houses in that manner, on that scale, is completely out of keeping with the other houses on Johns Road. Turning to the houses that front onto Grantham Road, at the moment there is an existing house which has an access onto Grantham Road, but that's historical. That's been there for many, many, many decades. The A52 is a trunk road, and that junction where the traffic lights are, when the lights are on green, it's a very fast road, even though it's supposed to be 40 miles an hour. So basically this proposal is introducing an extra hazard that wasn't there on Grantham Road. So in my view, I think that is madness. So in both cases, I think it is out of keeping with the neighbouring properties, and I would suggest to the committee that they should actually think to and consider refusing this application on the following grounds: that 1, the proposal is overdevelopment and over-intensive compared with the width of the plots when viewed from the roadside, and out of keeping with the neighbouring properties, which provides an unacceptable detrimental effect to the character of the street scene, contrary, as the Parish Council Planning Chairman said, contrary to Policy 11 of the Neighbourhood Plan. Secondly, that the scale and layout is out of keeping with neighbouring dwellings and out of keeping and injurious to the openness of the rest of the street scene. And thirdly, that introducing 2 new houses fronting Grantham Road would present an unacceptable additional risk and safety hazard to access and egress, given the nature of the A52 trunk road. So for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, I urge and plead with the committee to please refuse this application on those grounds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Well, those are all our speakers on this item. We heard from Mr. Simons, who is on behalf of the applicant, who told us a little bit about the background and the changes they've made following previous refusals, and how they consider they've overcome those. We heard from Mrs. McLeod from the Parish Council, who told us about the neighbourhood plan. It contradicts the neighbourhood plan, worried about the proximity to number 4 Johns Road in particular, and she is of the opinion that it's 4 new properties on what was a single modest property, and also worried about air and noise issues, both for anyone who will live in those new houses. And finally, Councillor Clark, also speaking against, also speaking on behalf of his other 2 ward member colleagues, considers it will change the character substantially of Johns Road and the street scene in general. He referred to 4 houses going into where 1 property used to be, 4 caught into a pot, I think he said. He doesn't dispute that there is probably a need for that sort of property, but not necessarily at this particular location. Also pointed out about worries about the A52 in particular being a fast trunk road. I think those have covered the most points made by the speaker in favour and those against. Mr. Pegram, would you like to pick up on those, please?
Very briefly, Chairman, I don't want to delay proceedings. Just Mr. Simons referred to these as affordable housing. Just to clarify, these are not presented as truly affordable in terms of our council policies. I would suggest that they are more affordable because they are smaller properties. In terms of air quality and noise, Chairman, noise is dealt with in paragraph 70 of your report. Air quality is dealt with at paragraph 71. In particular, confirmation that the site is not in an air quality management area. And the other issues, Chairman, I think are matters of subjectivity to a certain extent for you to consider as decision makers. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, what do we think about this one, please? Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Chair. Having just heard the speakers on this particular application, one of the most obvious areas of objection appears to be the fact that this proposal would be out of character, not match with the existing street scene, and be over-intensive. However, referring to paragraph 49, I would just like the officer to maybe put up 1 or 2 of the pictures again, but there is a comment referring to the fact that this would not be an alien feature on St John's Road, as there are already several pairs of semi-detached properties. So having heard the objections and our speakers, I'd just like clarification on, whether this is actually already in the area in terms of pairs of semi-detached properties, or whether this would indeed be a completely new picture.
Thank you, Chairman. As I say on Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier. This plan at the moment, I think there's 2 aspects to that issue. Some of the objections were on the basis that the area is characterised predominantly by detached properties, and I wouldn't dispute that. They are mostly detached. However, the yellow dots indicate the positions of semi-detached properties in this immediate area. The other aspect clearly that Councillor Clark raised, and I haven't done the comparison, is in fact in terms of the width of plots. But again, I will, you can see the pictures before you. I'll leave you to come to your own conclusions about that. But your officer's view is that semi-detached properties per se are not alien feature in the area. Yes, it is predominantly detached properties, but there are examples of semi-detached in the area.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Verdi?
Yes, it does. I mean, clearly, having seen the pictures again, you can see the size of the plots are fairly broad, and it does appear to be over-intensive. But in terms of the proposal and the officer's comments, again, it wouldn't appear to be completely out of sync with some of the developments there. But no, thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Pegram.
Now I'm looking at the participants list, and I don't see any hands up at the moment. And So can I ask a quick question? With regards to access off the A52 off the main road, would it be turning directly off the road into the property, or is there some sort of little filter lane type of thing that you sometimes get on these roads? I'm not absolutely clear from the layout on that.
Okay, so no, there's no right turn lane. I can show you, in fact, this plan, which I'm just about to show you, actually shows the existing road layout is the blue lines. Members may be aware that the Highways Agency have plans for improvements all the way along the A52 corridor. They are proposing alterations at this location at the junction of Bingham Road and Grantham Road. As I say, the blue lines are the existing carriageway alignment and markings, and you can see the extent of the what would result if they then implemented those improvements. So there would be no filter lane, no right turn lane or anything to come into here, into this particular site. Chairman, you will note, in fact, that there are no comments from the Highway Authority.
I did notice
that. That is because it's dealt with under standing advice. However, you do have comments from Highways England who do not object to this application. So they've considered this application and they do not consider that the proposal would give rise to unacceptable highway impacts onto the trunk road. Councillor Clark made the comment that the traffic, although it's a 40, is very quick along there. Clearly, we have to consider applications based on the design speed of the road. Sometimes we do get a situation where, and we've got one later on in the agenda, we might accept a lower visibility display because the traffic data demonstrates that actually the speeds are lower. But in this case, traffic shouldn't be travelling along here at more than 40, and we have to consider the application based on the design speed of the road.
Thank you. Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. Having visited the site, I have to say that the proposal, I feel, is out of keeping with the area and the type of dwellings that exist, certainly on Johns Road. Currently, the width of the plot has been taken up by the bungalow, and the developer is proposing to put two properties up, semi-detached in that space. Now, it's a very, very narrow spot anyway. I think it's going to result in massing and overdevelopment. And then when you look at the proposed access onto the A52, I mean, that frankly is an accident waiting to happen. Very busy road, I'm familiar with it as we all are. It runs into Nottingham, comes back out to the A46. You know, accidents waiting to happen, I would suggest. And yes, I fully accept what Mr. Pegham's saying, but you know, we all know that whilst a lot of people obey the 40, as many don't. The general public, I think there was some 15 or 18 objections of various kinds that they made in terms of massing and Johns Road being very narrow, problems with getting services in and out. And I have to say, I think it is over-intensive and certainly out of keeping with the current neighbourhood scheme. So I feel we should refuse this application.
Right. Okay. Are you in effect making a proposal there?
I'm happy to make a proposal, yes.
And if you're doing that, then you would need to give some reasons for the record.
Well, as I say, but going back on I think it's over-intensive in the first place. It is an overdevelopment in a very small space of land. And certainly the properties themselves, I don't feel will sit comfortably in the surrounding areas, certainly on Johns Road. You know, we have a selection of older style two-story properties. We have bungalows, space around them in terms of parking, so on and so forth. And this proposal, I feel, just isn't going to fit in aesthetically.
Okay, thank you. do you have a seconder for that at this stage? Anyone wishing to come in on this? No, I don't see any hands going up there. So, oh, Councillor Thomas is waving.
I'm not necessarily wanting to second, but I was going to ask before I decide whether or not I will second, I was wanting to ask Mr. Pegram to show one of his photographs again. I think, is this the first house that's got a full-length garden in a row of the rest of the houses along that row? I appreciate that there are two houses at the end that are the other way round, and houses have been put on Grantham Road behind those. But from there on in, is this the first house, the first plot that goes all the way between the two roads, and what happens to the houses further on? My concern is that this exit onto Grantham Road could become a row of exits onto Grantham Road.
Have we got the photographs again, please? Yes, we have. They're coming.
So yes, effectively you've got Carter Avenue coming in here with two detached properties with their gardens run down to the application site. You've got the properties on Grantham Road come to this point. So yes, this is the first one that has that goes all the way through to Grantham Road, which I think is also, excuse me for flicking through the photographs. Yes, you can see it's also confirmed by that plan, which goes further along, and the aerial photograph.
So it is the first house that's got that orientation, basically.
Yes.
The first plot that's got that orientation.
Yes,
I think the point has been made that there are other houses on that stretch that open onto Grantham Road, but my concern is that this could be the first of all those houses having exits onto Grantham Road, and as has been stated, it's a trunk road, which is they're putting considerable amounts of money into making it improving it, basically. So on that basis, I would second the motion to refuse.
For the same reasons, or are you adding anything in on that?
Sorry?
But for the same, or are you adding anything else in?
I think you need confirmation of the reason.
For the I need the reason.
Healy put forward.
Councillor Thomas. So we had Councillor Healy gave his reasons. I was just checking with you to see if you are using the same reasons or if there is anything else you're wishing to add to those.
I don't have any additional reasons, but the killer reason for me is the access onto Grantham Road.
Right, I think we've got that. Right, okay, so we've actually got a proposal moved and seconded. I don't see anyone else wishing to speak, so I suspect we're getting Councillor Bansal. Sorry, yes, missed you.
Sorry, that's okay. Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Pegram showed a revised image of the new layout from the road layout on how it would look. Could you just bring that up again, please, on the screen?
Chairman, what I would stress is that this scheme does not deliver this improvement. This is just the fact that this is the scheme which Highways England are proposing for that junction. But that shows you the, as I say, the new layout with the old indicated by the blue lines.
Yeah. So that's not how it is at the moment. Councillor Bansal, do you want to come back?
No, I just wanted to have another look at that. I just wanted to look in where the property was in relation to the potential improvements that are going to be made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so no other speakers. We've got a proposal moved and seconded to refuse permission for the reasons given. So we need to take, we're voting for this revised motion proposal. So Mrs. Sells, please. Oh, microphone.
Mr. Pegram's got his hand up.
I've got my real hand up.
Sorry, Mr. Pegram, I didn't see you, sorry.
Sorry, can I just have confirmation from Councillor Healy of the reasons for refusal, please?
The proposal, certainly with Johns Road and just as much the Grantham Road end, is out of keeping with the area and the types of dwellings generally. Going back to Johns Road, very small, narrow plot, which is development of the site. In fact, I think it's almost bordering the property to the left of Johns Road. I just feel it's over intensive, and then, as I say, the access onto Grantham Road from the other end of the site, I feel is well, highly dangerous, to say the least. And I think if a resident is coming out and wanting to turn right, potentially it would result in traffic being held up, possibly traffic coming out of town not giving way. So I envisage numerous problems that it could cause.
Okay, I wanted to seek clarification whether the access issue was a reason for refusal. Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, in light of the fact that Highways England don't object, though.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, Highways England don't object, but some members may have their concerns, as we've heard. Right, so unless anyone else wishes to say anything on this, I think we'll go to a vote. I hope I've not missed anyone this time. Apologies. No, I don't think I have. So, Mrs. Sells, if you could lead us through the voting for this. Then this is on the revised proposal for refusing permission for the reasons that have just been given. So your people will be either for that or against refusal.
Councillor Bansal.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Healy.
For.
Councillor Howitt.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Against.
Councillor Stockwood. You're muted.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
And Councillor Verdi.
For.
Make that 8 fours, 1 against, so the motion carries.
Are we clear on that? Okay, thank you. Councillors Clark and Brennan will join us again now.
Heidi hi.
I won't say hoody ho. Right, our next application is, oh sorry, yes, Councillor Thomas is leaving us for this one because she's the lead, one of the ward members. This is Willow Marsh Farm, East Loughborough Road, East Leek. Change of use of agricultural barn building of all existing farm buildings and land within the red line border of the site. Location plans comprising of agricultural and events use, and the conversion and change of use of the agricultural parlour building to a mixed use comprising guest house, C1, office B1, and use for events. And this is a past retrospective application, but I have to remind members that despite the fact it's part or retrospective, we have to look at each application as if it was a fresh application, but I'm sure Mr. Pegram would tell us that anyway. So over to Mr. Pegram, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just trying to find my cursor. Bear with me.
Oh, don't worry, it's late. It's humid. The computer's overheating. Frozen.
Oh, get back.
Oh, it's back. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the application site outlined in red, which is Willow Marsh Farm. There is another plan which I will show you, which actually also has a blue line indicating land within their ownership or control. In terms of the focus of the application, access comes in at this point on Loughborough Road, down the farm track, and the buildings in question that they're seeking change of use for are in this location here. That just confirms the location of the site in terms of the aerial photograph. And then some pictures. This is generally looking, I think is, bear with me, north, no, tell a light, south along Loughborough Road. So the access is here, where I'm indicating. That's looking the other way, so that's looking north. This property is actually within the applicant's ownership, but occupied by a tenant. So this is the access. There is another access that you'll see on the plans, which comes in at this point. But the intended activity is to be served by this access you can see in the foreground. That's looking generally easterly from the road across the site. The buildings are down in the bottom of the picture here. And then just looking more southeasterly from that access point across the fields adjacent to the site. Just stood back in the access, you can get a feel for the visibility from that access from that picture. And then looking directly down the access towards where the buildings are located. That's further along the access track, looking back up towards Loughborough Road. There is a proposal which was negotiated throughout the application to provide some passing bays along this part of the road. And then turning left, looking more easterly again across the paddocks and the fields, which sit adjacent to the application site. And now we get into the area where the complex of buildings are located. So you can see there's a range of different buildings. This is one building that is being used in connection with the events activity. It's a workshop, come stable, come food preparation area. That's looking down, so the applicant's dwelling is located there. This building here, it's proposed to convert that building to provide effectively guest accommodation and an office. So one of the activities that they run from this site is weddings and wedding receptions. One suggestion is, or example, is that building would be used where the bride and groom might stay over on the night of the wedding. That's just further along, looking down the track with the house in the distance. Looking to the left across the paddocks. There is a proposal, Chairman, and it'll pick up on the plans in a minute, for some of these fields to be used for occasional camping. And then again, looking across at the buildings and the complex of the area, you'll see there are large areas of hard standing which are to be set aside as parking for the activity. Although it does suggest from sort of evidence, they have had events here, evidence suggests that some people do arrive by taxi. This is stood within the complex of the buildings, looking back up towards Loughborough Road with the access track coming down the right-hand side there. And then this is the building that is to be converted to provide an office and guest accommodation. That's the front of the building, just to give you a different angle. And a different shot again. You will see that some of the work has started. We don't condone that, Chairman, obviously, but as you pointed out, we must consider the application as if nothing had taken place and on its merits. That's just looking through the building and then the roof detail. So the building you're now looking at is where they would hold events. And those events include, as I say, weddings, but they also include, got the word term, but things like yoga and fitness week events within that building. That's just looking from the building back towards the guest accommodation, back through the buildings. So this is the building which is used as a workshop, stables, food preparation area, and storage of waste, etc. This is the building on the left, which is used for events, and just a different angle of that building. That's the applicant's dwelling. As I say, there are two properties which are within the applicant's control but tenanted. I'll point those out on a plan in a moment. And this is one of them, actually. This is Lings Farmhouse. Again, that's Lings Farmhouse. So the group of buildings is over the right-hand shoulder of the photographer here. And then turning around from that sort of vantage point, looking back at the building which is used for events. And a general shot across, giving you the feel for the character and the openness of the area. And again, that's the building, Chairman. It was approved originally as a machinery store. There were concerns that it was not built in accordance with the approved plans. You will see in just a moment when I come to the pictures of the inside of the building, it has been built potentially with events in mind. It's got chandeliers, it's got some toilets in there, it's got wall lights. My understanding, Chairman, I don't know how frequently, is that when the building is not used for events, it can still be used for the storage of implements and farm equipment. And that's looking at, as I say, I think those are the toilet areas within the building. Back outside the building, so that's to the right, this is the implement store and food preparation area. Again, we've got some pictures inside of that building, just again, taking some wider shots of the area, relationship of the buildings. And as I say, this is in that long, low building. So it's a food preparation area, food refrigeration. There's also, as I say, it's a food preparation area. It's also used for workshop area and stabling in there. And just that's another building sits outside of the on the application side, but outside the area that's the subject to this proposal. This is Lings Farmhouse again. You can see the relationship between that building and Lings Farmhouse. This is the applicant's property. So sorry about the number of photographs, Chairman. I think it's important to see the context of the area you're in. So as I say, this is the site layout plan and location plan. You can see that there is an access point here. One of the initial concerns was about vehicles using that access track and disturbance to this property. That property is within the blue line. So where I'm indicating at the moment is the blue line. So everything inside of that blue line, effectively the bottom of the plan, is within the control of the applicant. The proposal is to use this access point, which is further south and therefore has less impact on that property. Come along with some passing bays on the access track down to the group of buildings. Again, this is the revised one, which includes a layout, a parking bay there, sorry, passing bay there and there. That's just the layout of the buildings, Chairman. So this is the building which is proposed to be used for the events. That was the building which was used as an office and guest accommodation. This is a sort of multi-purpose building, including workshop and food preparation area. And then you can now see the two areas which are identified potentially for use as occasional camping. And this plan now starts to show you the layout of parking around the site. So there is quite a bit of parking available when there are events being proposed. That's just the details of the building to be converted to guest accommodation, and that's the proposal for conversion. So it would include an office at ground floor, a living room, and at first floor a bedroom with ensuite and a gallery open void above the living room and a balcony across the front. Chairman, this originally came in purely for the conversion of this property, and the issue of the events was a matter investigated by our enforcement team following complaints we received that the building was not in accordance with the approved plans and not being used for the approved purpose. As I say, we don't condone that, and we must set those issues aside and consider the application on its merits. This is seen, Chairman, as a scheme which supports farm diversification and the rural economy. There have been some concerns, certainly in terms of noise and impact on neighbouring and nearby residents. You'll see in the report, Chairman, that we have received not one but two noise assessments. They in particular do focus on the closest noise receptors or sensitive noise receptors, which is this property here and Lings Farmhouse. But obviously there are other properties in the area and further afield. The Environmental Health Officer is satisfied that the impact is acceptable, subject to certain mitigations and limitations in terms of hours of operation, the limiting amplified music, having doors closed and generally controlling the level of activity through those conditions within and outside the building, but also noting that there's a need for people who will leave the property late at night or early morning to leave in a quiet, orderly fashion. And again, that's picked up through the conditions and all the informatives which require the applicant to display notices to that effect. Just in general principle terms, Chairman, as I say, we've looked at this as a farm diversification rural enterprise, and your officers are satisfied that this is an acceptable scheme having regard to our policy considerations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have speakers on this item as well. Oh, we have 3 speakers. The first is the applicant, Mr. Jenks, Simon Jenks. I think you're with us.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you yet, but we can hear you. I'm sure you've been here all evening, but just to let you know, you have up to 5 minutes to talk to us. Oh, we can see you now.
Hi, how you doing?
And if you're still speaking in 5 minutes, then we tell you that time is up. So as soon as you're ready, you can start addressing the committee.
Thank you. Good evening to you all, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. My name is Simon Jenks, and I'm both the applicant and the co-creator of this rural diversification proposal called the Willow Marsh Farm. Our application is supported by Section 6 of the National Planning Policy Framework and local planning policies 1, 5, 13, 17, 22, 31, 38. If successful, this application will create a diversified rural business that greatly supports employment in our local area, both directly through ourselves and indirectly through our third-party suppliers. The application provides a previously uncatered for service in our area and appeals to all subsections of society, from couples in love to people working on their yoga practice. We hope that our proposal reflects the current and future needs of local people and benefits their health, social and cultural well-being. I was born and raised in Eastleigh, and after university, I joined a family farm. 60 years ago, we had the opportunity to purchase the site next door that we now call the Willow Marsh Farm. We took a dilapidated, filthy, and economically unproductive farm and lovingly restored it into something that Rushcliffe can be proud of. In 2015, my wife and I got engaged, and like most couples, we agonized over where to get married. We're both quite creative and yearned for something a little bit different to the typical farmer's wedding. So we decided to invest some more time and effort and love into the derelict machinery barn that we were rebuilding at the time, and we held our wedding in there. In the process of clearing the site, we started to realize how beautiful the farm could be, and so we continued. We're now 6 years down the line, and what now exists there, most people can't believe that we created it ourselves, but we did. The wedding and wellness industries are huge, and we never appreciated at the time how attractive a place grown organically by a bride and groom and their families could be to others. The demand for people to use the farm for events has been truly overwhelming. We have couples wanting to travel from Paris, London, Australia, as well as many couples from our local area coming to Rushcliffe, bringing their families and friends and spending money in our local economy. I think we can all agree that in these uncertain times, this can be viewed as a positive outcome of our personal investment into the farm. Our mixed-use application uses existing buildings. In doing so, it encourages economic development of appropriate scale to diversify, whilst also continuing to serve our ongoing agricultural needs. The environmental impact of what we have achieved at the farm is very low. There is no new development of land and no expansion of hard standing areas for car parks and buildings. We have spent months responding and addressing all challenges to this application, and we're happy that all statutory consultees have no objections. The Highways Department have no objection, providing a further passing point is installed in our driveway. We have this week completed that work and provided 2 passing points that can accommodate 5 passing cars, which exceeds their requests. The Environmental Health Officer has had no objection to the proposal, but they recommend we install a noise limiting device within the barn and adhere to our own noise management plan that will be submitted to the Council for approval. Both the Nottingham County Council and the Environmental Sustainability Officer have also raised no objection to the proposal. The work we have undertaken or not undertaken in certain areas has led to greatly increased levels of bird and wildlife visiting and breeding at the farm. We've allowed ponds to establish and protected reed beds that now provide an important habitat for many species of birds. We've also planted a large number of trees and routinely invite birdwatching groups to come to the farm and monitor the success of these breeding colonies. We are confident that the increase in biodiversity benefits the wider community, and this development works with rather than against the natural environment. Objections to our proposal have been raised by Councillor Thomas, the Roberts family and their daughter Mrs Dillon. Mr and Mrs Roberts live on a property bordering the farm across the fields, approximately 500 metres from our buildings. The objection to our ownership of the farm began almost immediately, and for the last 5 years, Mr Roberts has promised to do everything he can to make our life and the job of restoring the farm as difficult as possible. Unfortunately, he has accessed the farm on numerous times and has also been verbally aggressive. We are sorry they feel so strongly about the application. And although at times this aggression has been challenging, we enjoy the opportunity to improve. And we've taken on board many of their concerns and the concerns of Councillor Thomas. We believe, and it's the view of the local planning authority, that we have addressed these concerns and provided a robust evidence of how we plan to reduce any possible disturbances to anyone. We have resurfaced our drive to reduce traffic noise and also move the access to the farm 70 metres away from the Roberts property. We have invested in a noise-limiting sound system, and our noise management plan will be continually enforced by Sarah and I as we live on site. It will always be our intention to safeguard our neighbours' well-being. We are very proud of what we've achieved, and we are so excited for the potential of Willow Marsh and all the benefits it can bring to our surrounding community. Yoga and wellness are a big part of our lives, and in this stressful modern world, they are becoming increasingly important. We are opening up our beautiful environment to share it with others, and we hope that you will all support our ongoing investment into Rushcliffe. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Bang on 5 minutes there. I saw Mrs Sells agitating. We were on 5 minutes. So thank you, Mr Jenks. We heard you, and that was clear. Our next speaker on this is speaking against the application, and this is Mr Gould, Nigel Gould, who is with us, I think. Oh.
Good evening, Chair.
Yes, and again, you're Mr Nigel Gould, who's speaking as an objector, and you also have up to 5 minutes to talk to us. And thank you for sitting through the whole meeting. It's been a long night, I know. But
yeah, it's no problem. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity of speaking on this application. I speak on behalf of Mr and Mrs Roberts, who are the nearest residents to the site, with their garden being 50 metres away from the application site. They have experienced a loss of amenity from the ongoing unauthorised activities at the site, and are concerned that this loss of amenity will continue if officer's recommendation is followed. There are several comments from our previous representations that remain. Firstly, the site is in a sensitive wildlife area with one point of access onto a secondary road in a remote countryside location. The principles of rural diversification and economics, as enshrined in the development plan, are understood by my client. However, it is considered that a holistic and carefully planned strategy to the business development of the site is required to seek compliance with the policies of the development plan. I would suggest that with the planning history, the retrospective nature of this application, and the amount of extra information requested by the council, that this application is neither holistic nor well planned, and as such is contrary to the policies of the development plan. As an example of the unplanned sequence of development on the site, I point members to paragraph 9 of the report. The planning application for the modern agricultural building was approved retrospectively. To the best of my knowledge, it has never been used for its agricultural purpose and was used without planning permission for the wedding venue hereby applied for. Another retrospective planning application. Secondly, the highways impact. Local plan part 1 and 2 and the neighbourhood plan policies require the impact of the development to be assessed as a sufficient package of measures to encourage the reliance on non-private cars, and that planning permission will only be granted for other employment sites if the proposal would not cause a significant harm on the amenity of nearby residents and occupiers. The comments from the local highway authority are noted, but it is not considered that there have been sufficient measures by means of enforceable conditions that will reduce the reliance on cars or protect the amenities of adjacent residents. The vehicle movements associated with 180 visitors for a weekend wedding will have a significant impact on the local highway network, the local environment, and the amenity of nearby residents. I would suggest that the recommendation as proposed and conditions 5, 6 and 7 as drafted would not protect these important factors, and therefore the proposal fails to comply with the policies of the development plan. I note that traffic movements to the site for business, day and evening visitors for the Saturday weddings will start from 9 a.m. and finish at midnight on the following Sunday. There will be further traffic movements on Sunday, with guests returning to pick up cars left overnight. Conservative estimate of traffic movements based on the agent's stated numbers and taking an average of 3 people per car or taxi would give 94 taxi and car trips on Saturday. There are no numbers for the business. I note that there are no conditions relating to the management of the large amount of traffic that will be visiting this isolated location, and suggest at a minimum this needs addressing. Thirdly, amenity. The number of types of different use proposed and the potentially intensive wedding venue and corporate event uses have not been adequately assessed. I note that the environmental health officer has no objections, but his request for sound insulation of the wedding function venue has not been taken up by the applicant. I would suggest this is a failing. The case officer recognises that the site occupies an unsustainable location, and in paragraph 46 of the committee report, he states that the principle of the proposal is very much an on-balance argument. For the genuine concerns of my client, based on their experience of the unauthorised development and uses, I would urge members to consider that on balance, the proposal does not warrant approval. There are clear environmental, transport and amenity grounds for refusing the proposal. With your leave, I have 4 questions. Firstly, how will the Borough Council ensure the noise system accords with the noise limits? Second question, how will the Borough Council ensure that the patrons follow the signposts to the site, apply with the hours of operation, and that they will comply with the suggested car sharing? Thirdly, how can members be satisfied that the noise management plan is sufficient to address the mini noise expressed? This is of relevance when you consider the period of time that the application has been in and the retrospective nature of parts of this application. And the fourth question, can members be sure that no further unauthorised development or uses will occur on this site? If members are satisfied that these questions have been answered, then the course of action is clear. I put it to you that there are many remaining questions and concerns about compliance with planning rules, and as such, I urge you to consider fully the officer recommendation and the conditions attached. Thank you for your listening and time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gould. That was within the 5 minutes, so thank you for that. And our final speaker on this is one of the ward members, Councillor Thomas, please.
Hello, everyone. I believe I've asked for a photograph to be displayed, Mr. Pegram, before my time starts.
Which one was it, Councillor Thomas?
One from the inside of the barn, from off the website, showing the slatted wall.
Bear with me.
I can start speaking if you like, and we can pick that up later.
No, sorry. Let's just. I think we'll just wait for the photograph. It's just coming now. Is that the photograph?
No, it shows clearly that there's gaps in between the slats on the walls.
Okay, I haven't got the one from the website, Chairman. These are the case officer's photographs.
Okay. Well,
I think that one will do, Mr. Pegram.
Righty-ho. So if you start your talking to us, Councillor Thomas, please.
Okay, thank you. I am supportive in principle of the concept of this imaginative venture. A successful business here would bring a welcome new facility to Eastleigh, employment opportunities for local people and trade to local businesses. Farm diversification is supported in the Eastleigh Neighbourhood Plan Policy B2B, provided there is no significant adverse amenity. There has been substantial noise from events that have already taken place, with severe impact on close neighbours and significant impact further afield. I note that noise management is covered by conditions 5 and 6, but as the noise management plan is not in front of the committee for this decision, I have concerns that it could fail to address the matter satisfactorily, and as such, I maintain my objection. Should the committee be minded to approve the application, there are 4 amendments to conditions I would ask you to consider. Firstly, my particular concern is late night noise from amplified music at weddings. The wedding barn has open slatted walls, and so very poor sound insulation. Even closing the doors and windows will not help much. I would ask that the maximum sound levels for amplified music be very carefully set, including levels for bass frequencies. I also request that permitted hours for playing amplified music are considered by the committee. For example, that the volume should be turned down at 11 p.m. and turned off by 11:30, with guests departing by midnight, say. It's important to provide certainty to neighbours about the hours of operation, given the level of disruption the noise will cause them. Therefore, I would very much like to see the hours included in the conditions separately from the noise management plan, should the application be approved. Second, I would like to see a condition stating that the frequency and types of events are broadly in line with those described in the applicant's document, our supplementary planning statement, uploaded on the 4th of December 2019 and summarised in paragraph 8 of the committee report, with any significant change to this requiring further planning permission, i.e. a maximum of 38 weddings on Saturdays and bank holiday Mondays between March and October, plus daytime yoga retreats and corporate events. Third, clarification in condition 8 that camping refers only to tents, not caravans or motorhomes under this permission, with a limit of, say, 10 tents at any one time. Fourth, requirement for a travel plan to be produced and approved to show how the applicant will encourage and support journeys by foot, cycle and public transport for guests and staff. Fifth, a condition or perhaps advisory note that any building alteration or change of use to the building labelled hay barn away from agricultural storage would require further planning permission. My concern here is noise from this open building if used for events. As Mr. Jenks has said, the business has so far grown organically. This has been largely without the benefit of planning permission. Going forward, the situation needs to be regularised to provide clarity for both the applicant and the neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So those are our those are our speakers on this item. We heard from Mr. Jenks, the applicant, who gave us some background to how the business started and has evolved over the years, and the benefits that it brings to visitors and the family as a business. Mr. Gould is objecting because impact on another family, the Roberts family, loss of amenity, and it's a sensitive wildlife area. He says it's contrary to our development plan, and also it's not being used in line with existing permissions, and also pointed out concerns on impact on local residents and traffic issues, and a high number of car movements, and also referred to noise concerns. And Councillor Thomas picked up on those as well. And although she supports the idea of rural development, this sort of development in principle, she has some concerns about noise and activities that we've just heard about, and is suggesting some further conditions should we be minded to approve the application. I think that's covered it, the main points we've heard about. Mr. Pegram, would you like to follow up, please?
Not at this point, Chairman.
Okay. Right. So, who would like to put their hand up, Councillor Clark? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I saw the little blue hand flash up, so I thought.
Well, congratulations. You see, innovation moves on, doesn't it? And progress. Well, you know what I'm going to say about retrospective applications. The applicant has very helpfully had the thing going already, so that we can assess what the impact of it is prior to us considering the application. But I just wanted to ask Mr. Pegram if he could clarify, because I've heard different speakers giving different distances to the nearest neighbouring properties. So I'm going to be asking Mr. Pegram what the distance is to the nearest neighbouring dwelling, and my follow-up question to that is, what complaints has he received already regarding noise emanating from the use that has already taken place?
I think you do need to come in on this now, please.
Bear with me, Chairman. I'm just.
No, I understand. I know you've got to look up the figures, the information.
Sorry about this, Chairman. I just...
That's okay. I mean, the Council Clerk has asked some specific points there, so you need time to find them.
Right. I don't know if you want to come back to me on those points.
Sorry, I was just talking over you. Sorry.
Chairman, well, can I? The speaker on behalf of the objector referred to Mr. Roberts as being the nearest property to the site. Bear with me, because I was just trying to find the... The address of that resident, I know this is highly unorthodox, Chairman, I may have to seek clarification from the speaker, but the address on our system for that person seems to be 4 Elms, Castle Hill, East Leek. If I just share with you my screen again, in terms of the nearest property, my understanding, Chairman, is that, hope you can see that now, there's a property here at the entrance to the driveway. In terms of the noise report focused on 2 sensitive receptors, i.e. properties that are not associated with the activity at the site. One was this property here, which is called Green Acres. The other one was property here, Ling's Farmhouse. To my knowledge, Chairman, that building, as you can see from the plan, is certainly the closest to the barn which is used for events. And I would guess that would be about, looking at those, they're normally 100-metre lines on these plans. So you're talking about, well, certainly 75 metres to the property, probably closer to the garden area of that property, because it's probably garden area in here. But unless, Chairman, with your discretion, you want to seek clarification from the speaker as to the address of Mr. Roberts.
I think, Chairman, just to move things along, I think Mr. Pegram's sort of clarified. I can see now for myself the distances, so I'm happy to move things along, Mr. Chairman.
You're clear on that now, Councillor Clark. So thank you for that. I want to take these. Did you want to add anything else to that at this stage, or ask anything else?
It was only just the complaints.
Oh, complaints. I'll come back to you on that one, Chairman. Sorry. The only thing I would say is that certainly as I mentioned during my presentation, the original application was generated through investigations by our enforcement officers. So certainly, yes, we as planning officers and enforcement officers had received complaints about alleged unauthorised development. What I can't confirm at this point, I can look up, is whether or not our environmental health colleagues received complaints through their process. But if you want to move on, Chairman, I may be able to confirm that in due course when the system warms up.
Is that helpful in the interim, Councillor Clark?
Yeah, that's fine. I realise it's getting late, so move on, Mr. Chairman. Yeah,
we'll move on. So I don't see any other hands at the moment, but so if no one else has got any other questions, I think perhaps we'll just wait for the we'll just check it all.
Yeah, I think just to clarify.
No, don't worry. Councillor Stockwood wants to come in. So, Councillor Stockwood.
Sorry, it's not related to what's gone on before, but I was on one of the other barns. It was going food preparation area. Where is that for the events? Because there seemed to be stabling and other activities going on in the same area.
Actually, that's a good question, because I must admit I had the same thought go through my mind. We were told it was food preparation, but I have to be honest that looking at it, it didn't look like the sort of food preparation one might have at a wedding. But then maybe that's just me, but it may be you as well. But so I think Mr. Pegram's got that in his mind as well.
Chairman, obviously, what I would say is, in terms of any potential food hygiene issues, they're dealt with under different legislation, not under the planning legislation.
So, so it's basically, Councillor Stockwood, it's not a planning matter, not for this committee anyway.
Okay.
But I certainly was. I observed the same thing in the photograph.
Thank you. I mean, rural diversification is much to be admired, but not if it's going to, really impact on others. There is a point where if neighbours keep complaining, we have a system for measuring that by the Environmental Health Department. So, perhaps enforcement, which I believe we are going to tighten up on, should be vigorously applied in this. The noise restrictor sounds a very good idea. I'm not sure quite how they work, and perhaps the suggestion that it should be certain times should be tightened up. But I'm interested to hear what other councillors have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, those were the suggestions made by Councillor Thomas. So should we be minded to grant permission? Should we consider those as additional conditions? Mr. Pegram.
Chairman, I have the answer to Councillor Clark's question. The system is certainly indicating that in August of last year, our colleagues in environmental health did deal with a complaint about noise from a loud party and loud music. Unfortunately, I don't have full access to that part of the system to tell me what the outcome of that was, but that complaint was closed in January of this year.
Okay, thank you. And did you want to say anything at this point on the comment Councillor Stockwood made about, or picking up on Councillor Thomas's suggestions about hours restriction and noise limiter conditions? Is that a possibility?
Yes, Chairman, it is. Well, it's bear with me. Those issues are largely wrapped up in the conditions that are presented to you. What we have in condition 6 is effectively a requirement for them to submit a noise management plan, and you can see that should include hours of use. Doors and windows are to be kept closed when amplified music is to be played. Items of amplified music, details of regular noise monitoring around the perimeter of the premises. Level should be set that the sound limiting device is installed. Controls to be put in place when guests are leaving the premises, e.g. to ensure no congregating guests. Details of signs to be displayed on the premises, including number, content and location, to remind patrons that when they leave, the venue is located close to other residential properties and to minimise disturbance when leaving the premises. So again, that requires the submission of a plan. It's not before you this evening, obviously, but the intention of that then is to introduce those mitigation measures to reduce or limit the impact on any nearby properties.
So when we do receive some, how within condition 6, within the month of if permission's given, when we receive a plan, how do we decide, or how does the council decide whether we like it or not, or whether the hours are acceptable, for example, and noise levels?
The condition would be discharged by officers principally, and we would consult environmental health on the details of that plan. So it's not a plan that would be presented back to planning committee, because obviously it's a different type of application. The applicant did include details which are set out in the details of the submission, page 74, which provide you with the typical timings of wedding events. Things like the yoga weekends or fitness events are seen to be less problematic and not likely to generate the same level of noise. But you can see from the second bullet point on page 74, the sort of typical timings. One would expect that a noise management plan would mirror those typical timings. So what I would suggest to you, Chairman, is I very much suspect that if we had a noise management plan submitted, it would say that guests would leave at 12:30 in the morning. Sorry, and condition 5 does require within 1 month of the date of the permission details of a noise limiting device, machinery barn, events barn to be submitted to the Borough Council. And again, that would be in consultation with your environmental health officers.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not wanting to prolong the discussion unnecessarily, but just to say, I think Councillor Thomas raises a very good point, particularly looking at the visuals with regard to the construction of the barn and its suitability for being used for events. When quite clearly there's no point having a noise limiter in there if you've got huge gaps between slats and the doorway and so on. So it strikes me that that building is not suitable for the purpose that it's being declared to be used. It also does bore me that we're once again facing approval of something which has already happened in some respects, which goes against the system that we're trying to operate here, which is disappointing. But that said, I think it sounds like a really good project to have in that rural location. It is a diversification project. It will create jobs and employment. I'm nervous about setting conditions that limit numbers of events and so on, because the business has to be also a viable business, and we can't determine here how many events would make that a sustainable and viable business. But I think the noise reduction and the timings of when people are leaving and so on are very legitimate concerns and ought to be stressed, extremely important with regard to the needs of the neighbours not to have their amenity affected severely by the use of these buildings for the new purposes. But I would like to recommend that if we've got a condition about the construction of that building to ensure that it is suitable for noise limiting, that we approve the application. That we move the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Verdi.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Brennan has put me to the post in terms of proposing that we move to recommend this, because I think, acknowledging all of the concerns that have been raised, I think my fellow committee members have acknowledged that it is an innovative, imaginative idea, and rural conversion to benefit the economy is a very good thing. Councillor Thomas's, conditions and some of the ones Councillor Brennan has just referred to will hopefully mitigate some of those concerns. And I think Councillor Stockwood made the very good point that this appears more to be about enforcement rather than the issues of the actual proposal. So I would certainly move to recommend we approve this, and I will second Councillor Brennan's motion.
Thank you. From a practicality point of view, Mr. Pegram, are we able to put in a condition about the gaps in the wall or the suitability of the building for amplified music?
I took that to be part of Councillor Brennan's recommendation that she wants a condition survey on the building. I think, Chairman, what I don't know, obviously I don't have the benefit of having the environmental health officer sat in the room with me, but when we get the details of the noise limiting device and the level at which that should be set, I'm unclear at the moment that that would take into account the structure that we're talking about. I would hope it would. I guess if that is a concern for members and they want to see additional measures, I think this ties in with what Councillor Brennan was saying. An additional condition along the lines of requiring specifying a timescale, but requiring a condition survey of the building and any additional measures necessary to improve the sound insulation qualities of that building. It might be additional boarding, it might be some insulation just to close up those gaps that Councillor Thomas highlighted in the building. That's probably, as I say, I can't sit here and say that building is fit for purpose because I'm not an acoustic engineer, but a condition of that nature might be the way to handle that issue.
Via the environmental health side of things. So, Councillor Brennan, what do you think to that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. So I can see Mr. Pegram vigorously writing down the conditions and the points here. Also, of course, with the benefit of being on this YouTube thing and also having the key players in the virtual room with us, people will be very aware of what the committee is thinking and concerned about, and I'm sure the relevant parties will take this on, and it will be noted in the minutes of the report as well. So I think, oh, Mr. Pegram, you wanted to say something there? Or?
Chairman, just on that point, the one thing I would say is that if the noise limiting device does take into account the current status of the building, there might not be a need for other alterations. I'll just float that as so we can put the condition on, but the result might be, no, there is no need for additional measures, or yes, there is some need for additional measures.
I accept that.
You're happy with that?
Given those great big holes in the wall, though, I should think it is going to likely be a requirement in order for it to be efficient. But I accept the point.
Good, thank you. Okay, well, I don't think anyone else is wishing to speak, but I understand that Councillor Clark is having a little bit of a technical problem at the moment. I think we can see Councillor Clark, but apparently he can't see us. I think that's the case, or because I've just received a message from him on here. Can we hear? Do you just want to say something, Councillor Clark, to see if we can hear you? Turn your microphone on makes a huge difference. I think you're on mute. Your computer's on mute. Right. So the reason I'm just pointing this out, colleagues, is because I received a text message from Councillor Clark, and it says I can still hear everything, but have lost the screen with visuals and the unmute. Oh, he can't find the unmute button, and he's also told me his voting intention as well. So I think if that's all right, Mr. Pegram, yes.
Chairman, I actually would like to, maybe again unusual that I should do this, but I would like to myself recommend an additional condition. I'd like to see clarification on the points that Councillor Thomas made, because no one has actually referred to those and whether they consider that any or all of those points should be included. I think just picking up on the hours restriction that she referred to, again, similar to Councillor Brennan's point, if we tie the hours restriction down too tightly, it may make the activity unviable. Certainly some weddings I've been to don't finish much before midnight or later. I would like to suggest, though, Chairman, that we do include a requirement for a travel plan and limits or encourage, so there's measures to encourage people to car share or use other means of transport. The applicant has certainly indicated that people do arrive or leave by taxi. I'd like to formalise that through a travel plan requirement.
Councillor Brennan, would you be happy to add that to your proposal, the travel plan?
I want to say yes, but how practical is that in such a rural location? Because if the applicant's going to be held to this plan, is it sustainable in that environment? I mean, it's desirable, but is it feasible?
I think my view, Chairman, is we're probably pushing at an open door. We're already told by the applicant that the people do arrive in cars together. I'm not suggesting the conventional type thing where we actually have county involved in monitoring the travel plan, but maybe something which encourages initiatives to reduce the reliance on the private car. Yes, it would be difficult to enforce. What does success of that type of condition look like? but it's just picking up on sort of some of the concerns that were raised to try and encourage people to car share and travel by other means would be, in my view, beneficial.
Okay.
Is that clear, Councillor? Okay, so yes, we can add that in then, Mr. Pegram. Actually, Councillor Thomas also referred to clarification of camping. I think she wanted to say, for example, restrict the number of tents to 10. Is that a practical thing to add in?
I'm trying to think of how we would. I'm trying to think what the harm with a
with tents.
Well, the harm of a motorhome as opposed to a tent. We may stray into other legislation, Chairman, because if it becomes a either a camping site or caravan site anyway, there's licensing implications. But personally, I'm uncertain of the reason for that requirement. My thinking, perhaps, a camper van is a motorhome is a more robust structure, if anything, and might contain noise or whatever. So I just wonder whether I can't see the need for that personally. It is tied in, I think, with the activity. The camping is tied in with the events activity anyway. So I think the concern that it might become just a campsite is not the major concern here. As I say, I think it's more a case of regulating it so that it is tied in with the events activities rather than becoming an activity in its own right.
Standalone activity. Yeah. Okay. Righty-ho. Well, I think we've covered a lot on that. We've got the recommendation moved and seconded along with the additional conditions. So, Mrs. Sells, if you could take us through the vote, please.
Yeah, can I just confirm to Councillor Clark, you can still hear us?
I'm back on stream. Yeah, I heard everything. I just didn't have the visual, but yeah. I didn't lose any sound, so I heard everything.
That's all right. We just want to make sure we can hear you. That's fine. Right, going round again. Councillor Bansal.
4.
Councillor Brennan.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Healy.
4.
Councillor Howitt.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Purdue-Horan.
4.
Councillor Stockwood.
4.
And Councillor Verdi.
4.
Well, I think even I can work out that that's carried, and it's unanimous as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's 10-4.
10-4. Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that. Now, we've got one more application to go. It's 3 minutes to 10. We're supposed to finish the meeting by 10, but we are allowed to extend to a maximum of 10:30. Are you happy that we do this final application?
Move it, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone against? Yeah, thank you. So that's formally moved and seconded, and all in favour, yes. So our final application tonight is Gotham, and 12 The Rushes, erection of a single-storey rear extension. The reason this is here before us tonight is because the ward member has declared an interest. So, Mr. Pegram.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be brief, and I hope this won't take too long. Just to make the point as well that under the new provisions of the Constitution, we would be able to do this as a delegated decision in consultation with yourself. This application came in before the changes to the Constitution, and the declaration of interest was before the changes. So we felt it was appropriate that we should bring it to the committee on that basis. But I will be brief. This is the application site in question. It's a detached modern property. If we go through the pictures, this is the property in question, garage to the side. We go around to the rear, there has been an extension to the back of the garage, adding this storeroom in. The current proposal is for a lean-to extension across here, about 4 metres wide, about 1.87 metres deep, not extending past the line of that workshop building. The neighbouring property has been the subject of extensions. This is a very minor proposal. You can see it's just literally that little bit in there that's being extended. So again, it's a lean-to extension. You've got the dimensions there. I was almost right, 4.05 metres and 1.87 metres deep. Not considered to have any adverse impact on amenity, and is before you, Chairman, with a recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. We have no speakers on this. I'm assuming there won't be any speakers, but what I've learned over the years never to assume anything. So
Move the recommendation.
move the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Do we have a seconder? Yeah,
second, yeah.
Oh my lord! All those hands suddenly going up. You know, so I saw Councillor Brennan's hand first, I think. So right, no one wishes to say anything on this. We've got the report anyway. Mr. Pegram's talked us through it. Do you know, I was going to ask for a show of hands then. I'm suddenly ready to do a time warp. But no, Mrs. Sells, if you could do the roll call, please.
Yeah. Councillor Mansell.
4.
Councillor Brennan.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Healy.
4.
Councillor Howitt.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Purdy-Horan.
4.
Councillor Stockwood.
4.
Councillor Thomas. You're on mute.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Verdi.
4.
That's carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's our final application for tonight's meeting. Thank you everybody for your time and patience, and I also for include our visitors, our speakers tonight. We've had a busy agenda, and it goes to show the variety of planning. One moment you're talking about a very major, big application, and the next moment we're talking about what's a relatively minor one, but it's in the for as far as applicants are concerned, they're all very important. So that's why we have to, well, applicants and also objectors, very important. It's essential that we give good consideration and debate, and I think we've done that this evening. I hope you agree, and thank you. Just before we go, the next meeting in September is almost certainly going to be another virtual one like this. Who knows what happens after September with COVID and everything, but I think for the time being, we must assume until further notice, we will continue to meet virtually like this. But I think generally speaking, it seems to work quite well. So with that in mind, thank you for your cooperation, and it's getting late, so we'll say good night and see you soon. Okay, thank you. Oh no, I'll close the meeting at 1 minute past 10. Thank you.